Well, hello there. Welcome in. It is The Drive. No Brian Wilson today. Brian's out this week, spending some time with Cabana Wife, the two doggies, the four-leggers, and other family and friends. I'll be with you for the duration of the week. More on that in just a moment. My name is Matt Murphy, normally heard from noon until 3. Thank you to Joan Jones for capably filling in. Frankly, sounds a little too good for comfort, if you know what I'm saying. So you might not be hearing her on my radio show anytime soon. Thankfully, I'm not good enough that Brian lets me come back on his radio show on The Drive between 3 and 7. I'm pleased to be here. 615-737-9986 is our telephone number. That number is available for you for the full 4 hours. I invite your telephone calls and the interaction, particularly today, because I don't know I know what day it is. I certainly don't really know what time it is. I feel like this must be what a liberal feels like. I'm kind of fuzzy. I'm not really sure what I'm doing, where I am, what day it might be, what time of day it might be. I woke up at 1 o'clock today, 1 o'clock in the afternoon today. I mean, and it's not just the Christmas hangover. I mean, I got that going on. I also have Red Eye Radio going on. Chris Weber's behind the glass making sure that everything that comes out of our speakers sounds as good as possible. Mac Morey back in the newsroom. Hello, Chris.
Hi.
How's it going?
Better than you, I guess.
I feel great.
I know it's Wednesday, and it's, 6 after 3.
I feel great in as much as I am unencumbered by any of that nonsense being in my head. This is fabulous.
Kind of like the Seinfeld episode where George got smarter,
right.
but Elaine got dumber.
I mean, I just, it's nice. I've got none of that clutter in my brain.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, good for you.
I'm available for business on this 27th day of December. I do know that it's the 27th day of December because I wrote that down. I know that it's 2023 for a couple of more days because I wrote this down. It is also my episode 479. So for those that don't know, I've been doing, and I know that Mandis on Nashville's Morning News somehow managed his, I think I'm not pulling what I'm doing is harder card. Although I'm about to pull the what I'm doing is harder card. But I think the 5-hour break between 7 p.m. and midnight is worse than going straight through.
I could see that, yeah. It's not quite enough time.
That's right.
But it's too much time to.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's too much time to stick around.
Yeah.
So I didn't stick around last night. I went home. Well, I didn't get to bed until about 8:30. And I have to get up at 10. So that's about an hour and a half. That's just enough of a nap to anger you.
Yep.
Wait, why 10?
To make you feel even more tired.
10 or 10:30 because I did Red Eye Radio last night.
Oh, I was thinking, sorry, we're in the nighttime. Yes, I was
Oh,
picturing
that's
this morning.
nice.
Yes,
That's nice. Hey, welcome to the party, pal. How you? Nice to see you there, Mac Morey.
Hey, what's
I
going
heard
on?
you comporting with Joan Jones talking about your little Friday Mac attack that you're going to be doing together. How you doing that when you're off on Friday? Huh?
Oh, you're right.
Huh?
Dang it, I didn't even think about that. Oh,
Cougar
Joan's
Chow.
going to be mad at me.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of that, so I'm not mad. I think it's funny. I realize that I think I'm the only full-time employee that's working on Friday. So let me
You may be right.
That's so
No,
true.
I am right.
I think
Yeah.
that's true.
So to pull back the curtain a little bit, and I don't know, you guys tell me. And by the way, I love what I do. I would stay here 24 hours a day. I love talking to you. I am blessed beyond measure. Believe me. I know how blessed I am to do what we do on a day-to-day basis. All of that said, let me complain about it for a minute. So flashback to November, really late October. Mandis is worried about the December schedule, and I get it. I've been a program director of a news talk radio station that has a live and local lineup. In today's modern society, there's an expectation that there's not best of programming on most days. On holidays, sure. But outside of that,
Yeah.
it is expected that we have live people in the seats. So scheduling the Christmas holiday, where a lot of folks want to take some time off, can be tricky. And I know this. And so I said to Mandis back in October, you just tell me what everybody else is doing, and I'll go where they're not. I'm good with that. If everybody wants the week between Christmas and New Year's off, which is traditionally what people want, I'm willing to work that week, and I'll take the week prior. You just fill in everything else and then let me know where I need to go. And Dan was like, thank you very much. Will do. Which is the reason that I took 4 days off before Christmas as opposed to this week off. So Brian was taking the week off, and Dan asked me if I wanted to slide into afternoon drive, and I take that opportunity any chance I get because Brian's got a great audience, and you folks are fabulous, and I love talking to you in the afternoons. It gives Joan an opportunity to slide in here from noon until 3, and all is right with the world. I think Cameron's doing the Chris Hand Show this week. So in the midst of all of that scheduling, after all of it was settled in stone, our great general manager, Allison, announces that December 29th is an official company holiday.
Boom.
Yep.
Hallelujah. So all full-time employees, congratulations. Woo-hoo. You get a day off. It's a little Christmas present from Cumulus Nashville to you.
Yeah.
How nice.
Very gracious.
Mm-hmm. And so I said nothing. I have an expectation that I'm going to fulfill my contractual duties, and I never expected to have the Friday off. I really didn't. But then I was talking to the gang yesterday, and I said, hey, Mac, this was before the show. You guys remember? I said, hey, Mac.
Oh, yeah.
You guys, you going to be here on Friday? And Mac says, no, I'm not.
No.
And I was like, Weber, you going to be here on Friday?
Nah, not so much.
Oh, really? And so Chris is off, and Dan's off, and Chris Weber's off, and let's see, Brian's off, and Bell is off, Ken Weaver is off.
That's right.
Everybody's off but me.
Pretty much everybody.
And so knowing just how to place something right underneath the skin of our illustrious boss man Dandis, I texted him. I said, am I the only full-time person working Friday? And so I get this barrage of, and I feel kind of bad. I think this what happened on his birthday. I get this barrage of concerned, anxiety-filled texts. Oh, wait, well, we figured, I don't have anybody else. 5 minutes goes by. Des Dickerson can't do it. I just checked with Des.
Oh,
he's like
Dan.
checking around. Dan's like worried about, do you want to do a best of? You can do a best of it. I was like, man,
You're giving him an ulcer, man.
I was giving him anxiety attacks. But still, I'm the only, pity party for Murphy on Friday. That's what we're going to do. A little pity party. You guys can call in from wherever you're going to be. Sitting by the pool, whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
I hope all of you people get snowed in. Did you hear snow?
Possible.
That is true. Yeah.
Possible.
Snow, baby.
Finally.
Am I the only one that gets excited?
I like it.
I love it.
Oh, I love it.
Come on. We're almost at the end of the year. We have had really no winter
Nothing.
as of yet.
Nothing.
Like a couple cold days, but
It ticks me off when it's just cold, though. Give me the snow. Give me something.
love it.
Yeah.
And the wife consistently wonders why I get this way. I can't help it. I turn into an 11 or 12-year-old when the prospect of snow is in front of me. I really do. And I don't know why, because snow means we're working.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, yes. Extra.
We're over at the Comfort Inn over there. Where
sign me up.
Oh, no.
I think that was Dan. Didn't he put us at that? We were supposed to go to the Best Western.
You got
and
a better deal over here.
And instead, he put us in the No-Tell Motel.
Sorry, guys.
The place where that was weird. Did you sleep over there?
I have once before, but this was many years ago when we got really snowed in.
It was weird. I didn't think I was going to make out of there alive. I thought there was going to be some sort of like skull and bones ritual in my bathroom was. I'm not making this up. The bathroom was bigger than the studio. It was weird.
Yeah,
it was a weird complex of. I'm talking about the Comfort Inn next door to the radio station where I got checked into my hotel. This was during an ice storm, I guess last year or the year before last, and my heat wasn't working. And so I called up and I said, hey, my heat's not working. Now, I walked by 4 or 5 empty rooms to get to my room. The curtains were open.
Yeah.
Saw that they were empty. And the guy says, sure. And he sent a guy with a heater, with like an air conditioner and heater on a trolley.
Oh.
And I'm sitting on my bed watching TV. And it's like 8 o'clock. And he's like, hey, how's it going? He brings that in. And so he replaced it.
He yanked the one out of the wall and
wouldn't give me another room. Anyway.
Wow.
So hopefully we'll get some snow. I'm all about that. Hopefully, a couple of feet. I wouldn't mind it.
Wow. I don't know about that.
Let's not get crazy. Yeah. Speaking of getting crazy, things are getting crazy around the United States of America. What with the, quote, pro-Palestinian protest. We're going to discuss some of the language that is used on the left with regard to these, quote, pro-Palestinian protests and why they're using the language that they are. These protests have spilled over to airports around the country. LAX was disrupted earlier today. New York City's LaGuardia Airport disrupted earlier today. What would you do? 615-737-9986. What would you do if you found yourself in the midst of that? I mean, I have every right as an American to use our roadways, our publicly funded roadways, to get to where I'm wanting to go. I'll tell you, if I'm interacting with these individuals and there is some form of political protest going on where they're blocking my ability to freely travel from here to there, we're going to have a problem. And I believe a lot of Americans feel as I do, that my rights don't begin and end where your protest begins and ends. While you have every right to protest, sure, under certain basic umbrella rules, you can not deny me my opportunity to live a life of my own choosing. You cannot deny me the ability to travel from here to there or to get to the airport. And with that in mind, I don't want to suggest that it is an appropriate thing to call for people to bust through these barricades, because that's going to cause a greater conflict, but they lean on that. That's their entire point. The entire point when these you-know-whats, I'm trying to be charitable during the holidays, when these you-know-whats decide that they're going to glue themselves to the road, you know what I'm saying? Or glue themselves to some art installation. Oh, look, I glued myself to the Guggenheim Museum. Well, they're depending on our humanity that we won't just walk over and rip them off of whatever they glued themselves to. I guarantee you this. If we decided as a society that we were going to authorize our officers of the law, that if someone decides to disrupt the flow of traffic or disrupt the basic commerce of a business by gluing themselves to this or that, hey, what we're going to do, just rip a few people off. Just rip them off. I guarantee you that gluing yourself to this crap will dry up pretty darn quick. Now, I don't want to hurt anybody. And they know that. I certainly don't want to kill anybody, and they know that. But I have an expectation that my elected officials and the authorities in these various states, and it could come to Tennessee, like that, it could come to Tennessee. We already have these quote-unquote pro-Palestinian, and I say quote-unquote pro-Palestinian protests because I don't know what that means except being pro-Hamas. And I have been calling on someone to explain the difference to me since October 8th. And I can't find a difference. And I can't find anyone to explain to me the difference. What is the difference between being pro-Palestinian? Oh, I'm a pro-Palestinian protester. I believe that Palestine should be free from the river to the sea. Well, what are you talking about? You have had self-governance since 2006 in the Gaza Strip. You've had self-governance since 2006 in the West Bank. The occupation of the Gaza Strip ended in 1993. Yet you tell me that, and that occupation only existed because of Palestinian attacks on the Israeli people that led to the 1967 conflict. This isn't that hard. So these quote-unquote pro-Palestinian protests, I want to know from my elected officials, I want to know from our law enforcement, what is the game plan here? Because if you want to avoid vigilante justice, you better let the population know what your plans are should these things come to Tennessee. Because I don't think us good old boys in pickup trucks are going to put up with that very much. Time to get the water cannons out. Love seeing a good water cannon. They use them in Europe. We don't use them so much here. sadly, some of our dark history in the 1950s and 1960s, I think, precludes us from doing what is necessary to clean the streets of some of these individuals that are disrupting commerce or disrupting my ability to travel. Anyway, we saw it in New York. We'll talk about it. We saw it at LAX. We'll talk about it. Is it possible it comes to Nashville? And what would our city officials, what would our elected leaders do about it if it was going to come here? It is 3:20. It is The Drive with Brian Wilson. No Brian today. Matt in for Brian until 7 o'clock tonight. 615-737-9986, either through phone or text. Love to hear from you. Back in a moment.
Hostage return talks in Gaza, snakes on Broadway, and secretaries of state and Homeland Security in Mexico talking illegal immigration with with their president today. Those stories, 3:30, Super Talk, 99.7 WTN.
Snakes on Broadway.
Snakes on Broadway.
Snakes on Broadway. I am tired of these blankety-blank snakes on this blankety-blank Broadway. More coming in about 5 minutes on Super Talk 99.7 WTN 325. Good afternoon. The Drive continues with Matt Murphy in for Brian Wilson, Joan Jones in for me earlier today. That happens throughout the course of the week, including Friday, where there will be no Chris Webber. There will be no McMorey. It will be me and Eric. What was his name? All by myself in the song. Eric Carmen. Eric Carmen.
Yeah.
When I was young, never needed anyone.
If you promise to sing that, I will definitely have to tune in.
I thought for a second. If you promise to sing that, I'll be here, Murphy. No, not so much.
Not that interested.
I'll sing it for you. George is in Mount Juliet. Hey, George, what's going on, buddy?
Oh, not much. I was watching a video the other day, and this reporter was talking to the woman that's in charge of whatever bureaucracy it is that's over the air marshals. Stop me if you've heard this, but they're not watching for terrorists anymore. They're not flying on planes anonymously looking for terrorists anymore. They're following people's names that are on a list from January the 6th. That's what they're doing. They're following those people that were in the Capitol that flew into D.C. on January the 6th, the day of the supposed insurrection. Whether they went to the Capitol or not, anybody that flew in and out of the D.C. area airports is on a watch list now, and that's what air marshals have been doing since then, is they're following those people.
Where did
and
you?
I didn't know if you'd heard that.
Well, I have not. Where did you see the story?
It was one of those news reports that comes up on like your Facebook feed. So that's the reason I was calling you, because if it was actually a real thing, I thought you would know about it. But, you know, everything I saw, it didn't look like fake news to me. But, you know what I'm saying?
Well,
I don't even know the name of I don't even know the branch of the service that's over the air marshals.
What I see, and I just did a quick search while you were talking, George, I've not heard this story. So the basics of the story would be that our air marshals, who are a division of or employed under the umbrella of TSA, the Transportation Security Administration, that they have been told to, pardon the expression, but marshal all of their energy toward finding January 6th individuals as opposed to monitoring terrorism. Is that the thrust of the story?
Yeah, yes, sir.
The only thing that I can find as I talk, and I'll do a little more sleuthing while McMorey's doing the news, air marshals following people who flew into D.C. That's from TikTok. I don't know that I trust that.
I don't have TikTok, so I don't know.
Well, I mean, I'm looking on a Google search right now. Air marshals following January 6th. Why let's I did see a story from a couple of years ago about individuals that were being put on a no-fly list after the Capitol police or after the Capitol riots. So my first woman. Go ahead.
This woman said that they weren't targeting people that were at the Capitol. They were targeting people that flew into the D.C. airport, either flew in or flew out on that day. So, and I want to say one other thing, and then I'll listen to you off air, is I really like your political views as a person that considers myself an American first. And if I had to put a label on my political views, I would probably label myself as a libertarian. But I just wanted to tell you I really appreciate your points of views, and I like your show.
Well, thank you, George. I appreciate that. I'll look into this other story too, and you keep listening, okay?
All right, thank you.
You're very kind. I would have sworn that there was going to be a but.
I was kind of waiting on it too.
I was waiting on it. Like, I really like your political views, but you yell too much, or I really like your political views, but you're one ugly SOB on Super Talk TV or whatever. And there was no but that came. So thank you, George. That's very kind of you. As far as the air marshal story goes, I'm going to look into this because at first I would be somewhat dismissive because I think air marshals can do both. If there are individuals that are wanted for questioning, and I understand how the January 6th protesters have been vilified, and I understand how it has become a political persecution of these individuals. And we've talked about it quite a bit on the show. So they can do both if there are people that they are looking for to question. Plus, if they have the ability to look for terrorism, they can do both. But if we're talking about air marshals that have a list of individuals that were flying in and out of Washington, D.C. on January 6th, regardless of where they were or what the belief is as to what they did that day, that's a problem. That's a persecution that goes several steps too far. I'll look into it during the break. Mac Morey right now will look into headlines. It's 3:31. Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
"31 minutes after the hour of 3 o'clock, I'm Mac Morey with your top stories. Currently 52 degrees on Music Row. Chance for some showers later this evening. Depending on the temperatures, it could be a freeze, some snow. We'll keep you updated. Forecast traffic report coming up 5 minutes. U.S.-Israeli citizen Hirsch Goldberg Poland, who is being held captive in Gaza, was supposed to get a flight today to start a planned trip to Southeast Asia. The 23-year-old was abducted by Hamas from the Nova Music Festival. Family and friends today gathering at Ben Gurion Airport in central Israel with banners urging the government to bring Hirsch home. Flyers were also printed up. Here's Rachel Goldberg Poland, Hirsch's mother.
They're putting them on every single seat in the airplane that he was supposed to be flying on today. And so we just came here with a group of 50 friends to sing some songs for Hirsch and to give the traveler's prayer. That's traditional Jewish people say a prayer before you go on a long journey.
Israel says it aims to free the more than 100 hostages who remain in captivity. Right now in Tennessee, Metro Council members voted to adopt an ordinance this month that prohibits the handling of snakes for money on or near public property. This comes after snake handlers have been seen on Broadway, potentially putting people at risk. Mayor Freddie O'Connell signed off on the approval of the amended ordinance on December 21st. And the Secretaries of State and Homeland Security are meeting today with the president of Mexico in the country's capital. Here's Stephen Portnoy.
The high-level meeting with the Mexican president comes as talks resume among senators about possible border policy changes. The bipartisan negotiations taking place over video conference are centered on ways to implement new curbs on asylum claims. They're not expected to result in an agreement until Congress returns to Washington after the new year. On their trip, Secretaries Blinken and Mayorkas are hoping to convince Mexico to do more to prevent migrants from traveling on to the U.S. border.
And that is the latest news. Weather, traffic next. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
I wanted to touch on the history of Tethered and kind of how it came about.
There was a handful of us that were already using similar equipment. At the time, however, you couldn't just go to the store and buy saddle equipment. It just didn't exist. And selfishly, we just were making gear that nobody else would make for us and that we wanted ourselves. And our goal was just to make enough to break even. Fortunately for everybody involved, it took off. It's got an appeal. People really liked it.
When you think of a saddle, that's what I think of. That's the first name that I think of when I hear about a saddle.
For me, the reason I got into it was I'm hunting public land, and most of the time I'm going pretty deep. Being lightweight and mobile was huge. I walk in with a pack and my bow. That's it. The more I did it, I was like, man, there's so many features here that are helping me improve as a hunter, where I can take different shot angles and stuff. And I'm going to tell you, I feel safe with this rope all the time.
Yeah.
From the ground up, I'm hooked in. If I fall off this thing, I'm just going to swing a little bit. And I think the learning curve is small. It's just about getting comfortable with your equipment. It's the biggest thing. And for me, it's repetition and then fine-tuning that to meet my needs. And that's the cool thing. What I like and what might meet my needs might be a little different from you. And even though we're doing the same thing, you can tweak it to meet your needs. And I really like that aspect about it.
But we've done a really good job of just innovating and creating products that don't exist. You're seeing the growth of the sport. You're seeing the innovation. And you're seeing all of these cool things that we make, and it's because we actually use it.
Super Talk 99.7 WTN, Matt Murphy and you. The drive continues. Brian Wilson off this week. He's back in the new year. I'll be back in my normal position between noon and 3 in the new year as well. All right, so this news story on the air marshals, I think this broke over the Thanksgiving holiday. Maybe I missed it because I was out last week, the week before Christmas. But I do have the story now, and Joan was kind enough to send me a link as well, noting that she had discussed it yesterday or day before. So 2 different stories here. One, the Biden administration's Department of Homeland Security has had federal air marshals following people for years who flew to Washington, D.C. on or around January 6th, even if they did not go to the Capitol and were never charged with a crime. That's according to an association representing air marshals. Air marshals were allegedly pulled off sensitive missions. This actually coming from the Daily Wire, by the way. Air marshals were allegedly pulled off sensitive missions to follow political or potential conservatives, suggesting that not only was a law enforcement agency politicized, but that the people with no involvement in politics might have been placed at risk as a result. The finding comes amidst a revelation that the FBI led or allowed an apparent child rapist to go free to pursue January 6th cases. So, here's the story. 5 days after the January 6th protest at the Capitol, Representative Benny Thompson, Democrat, Mississippi, then Representative John Cotto of New York, wrote the head of the Transportation Security Administration to demand the agency, quote, disrupt the travel of terrorists who just attacked the seat of the U.S. government, citing online chatter as evidence that they might be, quote, Al-Qaeda-style bombers. And all of that turned out to be bogus. Just pablum. Soon, TSA appeared to be doing just that, a situation discovered only because of an almost comical situation, according to the Daily Wire story, in which one air marshal was forced to monitor another air marshal because his wife was in Washington, D.C. during the time period of January 6th. Y'all following me? In January 2023, David Londo and Sonia Labasco, the president and executive director of the Air Marshal National Council, an association that represents air marshals, wrote to House leaders saying that innocent Americans were being put on watch lists. We have recently become aware that the Transportation Security Administration and the Federal Air Marshal Service are improperly classifying innocent Americans as, quote, domestic terrorists on their internal database watch lists. Most of these classifications occur in the absence of any investigation or either any follow-up. They said that in one case, because the wife of an air marshal was in D.C. on January 6th, never went to the Capitol, mind you, FAMS, the Federal Air Marshal Service, began following her on flights. Since she was, I'm sorry to laugh, but it's funny, Because she was normally traveling with her husband, this meant that one air marshal was assigned to fly on a plane to monitor another air marshal. You can imagine the scene when the husband had to introduce himself to the air marshal who was following him to explain as required that he was carrying his weapon on board because he, too, was an air marshal. How dumb do you feel like the air marshal that was following the other air marshal felt when they had that conversation? I'm just following the orders, sir. May I see your papers? I mean, I joke about it, but that's what this has become. One such flight, the assigned air marshal told the husband that he was, quote, originally scheduled for a high-risk international mission, but it went uncovered because he was monitoring the wife of his colleague, according to the letter submitted to Congress. The husband was able to see I can't believe I've missed this story. The husband was able to see in the TSA's computer system that his wife was classified as a domestic terrorist. I mean, he had access to all of this information about his wife. And she remained there for 2 years, even though she was never arrested. She was never even questioned about the Capitol protest, which she did not participate in. The wife is not alone. She is just one of many. They've been monitoring and hearing about many similar stories from the FAM membership about being assigned to surveil people that TSA or FAMs labeled as domestic terrorists, specifically due to being in Washington, D.C. on or around January 6th. The Daily Wire story continues. One January 6th defendant, Kirsten Nielmia, a 5'6" lesbian who was charged with a misdemeanor, said that at sentencing, quote, I've been red flagged at the airport. I have to go through extra security while other passengers stare at me as if I'm a terrorist. I've had other passengers come up to me, I have videos of this, and tell me that undercover police or air marshals were watching and following me. They peeked inside the ladies' room while I was there. Completely humiliating, totally unnecessary. According to the Air Marshal National Council, they said that the TSA had repurposed a domestic surveillance program called Quiet Skies to follow people and may have even people who were even weekly linked to January 6th. The program, which FAMs initially kept secret, not only from the public but from other government agencies, allowed air marshals to flag and follow people who are unknown or partially known terrorists, who are not under investigation by any other agency, and are not in the terrorist screening database. And on it goes. Representative Pete Sessions, chairman of the Subcommittee on Government Operations and the Federal Workplace, wrote in June of 2023 that the deployments were halted in January 2023 due to the ongoing DHS Office of Inspector General investigation to determine whether the deployments were legal. So our priorities completely out of whack under the Biden administration. I would expect no less. They think they have found the holy grail of political action regarding January 6th. But as I've told you for a long time, if Democrats hand us any gift during the holiday season, it's twofold. One, if they think they have a winning hand, they always overplay it. And trust me, they believe this January 6th nonsense is such a winning hand for them. And it is. It has become nonsense. At least it's nonsense for people who are not intimately or directly involved. For those who are intimately or directly involved, it is an absolute horror show, and I'm not diminishing that. We've spoken to individuals who are family members of those persecuted. I personally know someone from Birmingham, Alabama that I believe was killed by the FBI. What do I mean by that? Man by the name of Daryl Hubbard. He's a big fella. Everybody called him Big Hub. He was a regular listener of mine in Birmingham, Alabama, and he was in attendance on January 6th. He went to the Capitol. He did not go in the Capitol. He determined that it was not right to go into the Capitol. He told me this on January 8th or 9th, several days after the events happened. He called me. He detailed it for me. He was interviewed by the FBI no less than 5 times. The FBI consistently harassed him at his home. Eventually, Daryl Hubbard died of a heart attack. And I believe he died of a heart attack in part due to the stress placed on him by the FBI and fear. They told him during the interviews that he was going to jail if he did not come clean and tell them everything he knew about the build-up to January 6th. To which he said, I don't know what the hell you people are talking about. I went up there because I support Donald Trump. I went up because I was frustrated with the results of the election, and I didn't go anywhere near the steps of the Capitol, much less go inside of the Capitol. He was outside. He was part of the greater crowd that did nothing wrong and that have been persecuted since that day. It's wrong. And it's way past time that we began the clapback and the pushback on this nonsense. So thank you to the caller for bringing this to my attention, and we'll follow up as circumstances warrant. There's one other story out there that I did find about air marshals being forced to go down to the southern border and deal with illegal immigrants crossing at the southern border as opposed to doing their actual jobs. This was from November of this year, where U.S. Air Marshals, normally tasked with protecting travelers, I did see this story when it happened, especially surrounding national holidays. They've instead been deployed to the southern border to assist other agencies grappling with the flood of illegal immigration coming across said southern border. In 2021, U.S. Air Marshals, who are federal law enforcement under the Transportation Security Administration, were given the option to take a volunteer-based 30-day deployment to the southern border. However, earlier this month, the Biden administration announced that it would now be mandatory. Some air marshals reportedly plan to refuse the mandatory orders because they fear it would leave American travelers unsafe. The director of the Air Marshal National Security Council, Sonia Labasco, that I just mentioned, told Fox News, we've received an email last week that resources are depleted as far as our flying air marshals. Rank and file air marshals are going to refuse to deploy and risk termination, noting the administration's plan would remove federal protection from 99% of commercial airline flights during one of the busiest times of the year, right now. So these are the stories that the caller was referencing, and they're big, and I'm glad you brought them up. Thank you so much. It is 48 minutes after the hour. We'll get to Rick in a moment. We'll get to Jimbo as well. Matt Murphy sitting in for Brian Wilson. It is The Drive. You're listening to Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Hey folks, Paul Winkler here. One of the things that we see from time to time, well, way too often, is this. Let's say that you go to a financial advisor and they say, hey, you need to set up an investment portfolio, and what we need to do is we need to have some of your money in stocks or mutual funds or ETFs or something like that, and we need to have something fixed or guaranteed in your investment portfolio that'll protect you against the market downturns. And quite often what they're talking about, they may not use this word, but often what they're talking about is putting your money into some sort of an annuity, like an indexed annuity or something like that, or a fixed annuity. And what they're doing is they're saying, hey, let's put your money in both of these, which sounds really good. And you should. And typically in an investment portfolio, you do want to have fixed investments and stocks as well in the portfolio to protect against inflation. But here's what happens when you manage a portfolio. Let me use a really, really simple example. Let's say I have a portfolio and I got stocks in there. Then I have my fixed income, my bonds in the portfolio as well. And let's say I have half my money in each. When stocks really do well, what we want to do is they're going to be overweighted in my portfolio. I own too much of them because they've done well compared to bonds. It was supposed to be half and half, and now maybe it's 70% stocks and 30% bonds, let's say, or something like that. So I want to sell some of this and buy some of that to bring it back to 50-50 and back and forth throughout time. Well, the problem is when you're managing a portfolio and rebalancing in that way, bringing it back to the original portfolio mix of half and half in my example, I'm going to have to incur a trading cost or a commission or a back-end surrender with the annuity. It doesn't make any sense to use that product in this particular manner. Why do people do it? Well, the reason quite often is this. Commissions are very high with these products. And a lot of firms, they actually require their advisors to recommend a certain amount of annuities for every person that walks in the door. Now, typically annuities are used for a different purpose. They were actually designed for a totally different purpose. And that was distribution toward the end of life. When somebody looks like they're going to run out of money, they're annuitized. Now, let me tell you something. One study showed there was only like 5% of annuities are ever used in that fashion. Most often they're sold as an accumulation vehicle like this, and they were never really designed for that purpose. If you want to learn more, call us for a free 15-minute phone call or go to our website, paulwinkler.com. The number 615-851-1950 or paulwinkler.com. We don't do anything on commission, and we like to rail against these types of things and help investors do what is in their best interest. paulwinkler.com.
Meetings between U.S. officials and Mexico's president over the recent border surge, threats towards a Tennessee hospital, Apple allowed to sell one of their products again, and the Tennessee Wildlife Resource Agency offering a award. We'll tell you what for coming up at 4 o'clock. Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
I have an admission, McMorry.
Oh, yeah?
It's irrational, but it's real.
Irrational? That makes sense.
Every time I'm beginning to get angry at you every time I see something about Taylor Swift on television. I don't.
It's not me.
I can't help it. I can't help it. I'm looking at hashtag Never CNN right now on one of the monitors. They're going over the fact that they say Taylor Swift tied Elvis's Billboard record or something or another. I don't really care. But I'm watching this and I'm like, why is this news? Why is this on supposedly a news channel? And I'm getting angry at you.
Me.
I blame you.
I have no choice over CNN's programming.
I don't know why I blame you, but I am. It's infuriating.
Everyone's calling her the Chiefs' Yoko Ono.
Well, I think rightly so. Did she not do a concert at Arrowhead?
Before the season? Yeah. In the off season.
And now the team is crappy.
She cursed us.
Mm-hmm. And I will. All right, fine. I'm going to do this. You ready? I will make a sincere case that the fact that Travis Kelce is dating Taylor Swift is affecting his play on the field. I think the pressure of her being in the stadium. I mean, has he not had a problem with drop passes since they've been dating? And not just the pressure on the field, the pressure off the field, the distractions that happen off the field. Is the man focused, McMorry, on football or not?
I think he's focused.
You think he's focused?
I think he didn't go to her 34th birthday party because he wanted to stay in Kansas City for practice.
Was he in Brazil or not? Did he go to Brazil during the season?
On his bye week, absolutely.
Did he go to Brazil during the season?
On his bye week,
Why is he not studying film? Why is he not studying Raiders film? I'm not even a Chiefs fan, and I'm mad about this. And then she's still. I've been ranting about this for 3 minutes. They're still covering the story, and I blame you. I want to throw something at this screen. I really do. I'm not going to allow myself. The magnitude of Swiftfluence. Or no, I'm sorry, Swiftluence. Swiftluence. Ugh.
Texting CNN now. Ugh. Double the Swift coverage, please.
Oh, shut your filthy, disgusting chief mouth. I'm telling you, you want your Chiefs to win again. You need to support this breakup.
No.
Yoko Ono.
None of that.
Yoko Ono. She affected John Lennon in a negative way. She led to the Beatles breakup. Jimbo is next in Hermitage. Hey, Jimbo, how are you?
I am mighty fine, my friend. Just trying to get over this old creep got a hold of me.
Well, I get it. I'm just a pirate chasing booty.
Yeah, I'm on. Understood. My question was, it's been on my mind for quite a while. Mexico at our southern border, and they're supposed to be some kind of an ally, I think. Why do they not protect their southern border? And why do they let all these many millions march right through their country to come to our border and start sneaking in? I don't get it. I just don't get it.
Do you know what Mexico's greatest export to the United States of America is?
Yeah, I know it's money. Yeah.
Well, I'll give you the thing. It's petroleum. It's petroleum and petroleum products.
Right. There you go.
Do you know what number 2 is?
Well, Lord, I could guess something horrible, but no, I won't.
Human beings.
Sure, that's what I was thinking.
Right.
Exactly, yeah.
So why would the Mexican government ally themselves in helping us stop the thing that's bringing so much money into their economy?
Yeah, and the cartels, of course, the drugs and fentanyl. It's so. I hope other people will call in about this subject, and it's just been on my mind for quite a while. Why do we allow it? Why do we give them money about anything to rape our country?
Well, it's one of the things that I thought, and thank you, Jimbo, for the call. I do appreciate it. It's one of the things that I said at the time when Donald Trump claimed that he was going to build a wall and Mexico would pay for it. Anyone that wasn't trying to play political games with the statement, and I understand the statement was at the time and still is somewhat dramatic and some would even say controversial. I do think that it is born in truth. Donald Trump's plan was to build a wall between the United States and Mexico to prevent illegal border crossings and then go to Mexico and say, I understand that you're generating a lot of monetary income because of illegal alien activity. We're going to rework NAFTA to better benefit, and he did do this, to better benefit the United States of America. And in working out NAFTA, we're going to recoup a lot of the money that it will cost the United States of America to build the wall itself. So Donald Trump was not just talking out of an orifice that wasn't his mouth when he said that. He understood that playing the long game would benefit the United States of America through reworking the North American Free Trade Agreement with Mexico because of the wall and pushing them into a corner as a result. All right, 615-737-9986. Do Tennesseans have criminal immunity if they were to hit a protester in the street? I'm going to get into that in just a moment because I have some information on that. 3 more hours to go. It is The Drive. No Brian Wilson, Matt Murphy, and for Brian, time for news. Mac Morey in the newsroom on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
It's 4 o'clock. I'm Mac Morey with your top stories. Sunny, 52 degrees in Nashville. Possibility for showers later on tonight, depending on how chilly it gets. That could turn into ice, snow. Traffic complete weather forecast coming up in 5 minutes. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and other top U.S. officials traveling to Mexico to meet with Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador. The crisis at the southern border tops the meeting scheduled for today and coming as another large caravan of migrants makes its way north. President Biden spoke with the Mexican president last week, with Obrador saying the United States and Mexico need each other and need to work together on the issue. Elizabeth Schulze.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas are meeting with Mexico's president today. And as far as what they're trying to do, a key motivation is to try to get an agreement on enforcement of some of the border security to try to stem the flow of migrants. There is this caravan of an estimated 6,000 to 10,000 people making its way toward the U.S. border through Mexico from countries including Honduras, Venezuela, El Salvador. The president is trying to get that flow lessened.
And in just 5 days last week, Border Patrol processed nearly 50,000 migrants who entered the U.S. illegally, with daily apprehensions surpassing 10,000 thrice. That's up from 6,400 average last month. Crime in Tennessee. An Oklahoma man was arrested last night for allegedly making a violent threat against TriStar Hendersonville Medical Center. Officials said it was a threatening message that included odd comments and frustrations from the caller. Police realized through investigation that 45-year-old Kyle Andrew Odell was the culprit and that he had used the same cell phone to call an Oklahoma hospital prior to this. He will be held as a fugitive from justice pending extradition to Sumner County. And some encouraging news for anyone in the market for Apple's latest high-end watch. A federal court says the company can resume selling them despite claims Apple stole its technology. Andy Field.
The International Trade Commission froze all of Apple's Series 9 and Ultra 2 watch sales because another company claims Apple infringed on its watch medical monitoring software. It's not the first run-in Apple's faced as it changes its watches into health management devices. Last year, the same commission ruled Apple infringed on another company's wearable heart monitoring EKG technology. All of this may cost Apple more to make the watches and the rest of us more to buy them.
Right now in Tennessee, the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency trying to find out who's responsible for killing a young elk calf. This was in Claiborne County on December 22nd. A hunter found the calf in the Valley Creek area. Officers say that it was shot with a small caliber rifle. TWRA now offering a $3,000 reward for information leading to a person or persons arrest responsible for killing this elk. That's the latest news. Traffic and weather up next. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
It is The Drive. No Brian Wilson today or tomorrow or Friday. Matt Murphy in for Brian those 3 days. Brian taking some much-deserved time off. It's 4:06, Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Pleased you've decided to join us. Whatever time you're able to give us, we're certainly appreciative, whether it's 4, 5, 6 minutes or the full 4 hours. Thank you. Information-fueled and opinion-driven. News Talk Radio for the masses. It is Wednesday, December 17th. It's December 27th. I figured it out. December 27th, Wednesday, 2023. Couple more days until 2024. Joe Biden's gone for the rest of the year, ladies and germs. While the southern border situation continues to boil over, while top U.S. officials are currently holding crisis talks with Mexico, Biden's not among them. While people like Mayor Rolando Salinas of Eagle Pass is begging the federal government for help, I'll have a clip for you in just a moment. While others like Democrat Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, a self-avowed socialist, is saying it's the entire country that is now at stake because of illegal immigration. Joe Biden has decided it's a good time to go to the U.S. Virgin Islands. Well, he'll spend the rest of the year on vacay. I understand that. I try not to have a different set of standards or a different set of rules depending on who is president of the United States with regard to how I feel about these things. And as I said during the Trump administration, the presidency goes wherever the president is. The White House goes where the president is. But I would say that this is untoward. Joe Biden has spent, you want to guess how many days he's been on vacay? Official vacation? 417. That accounts for 39% of his presidency. Now, I could make an argument that him on vacation is better because at least he's not doing more negative things in Washington, D.C., or his people are not doing more negative things in his name. 39% of his time in the White House, he has spent away from the White House, either in Delaware or what is that? I don't know that he spent any time on Martha's Vineyard. He was in Delaware for a while. I know he spends a good amount of time at Camp David. He goes down to North Carolina, like to the little islands, the border islands of North Carolina from time to time. And now he's in the U.S. Virgin Islands, spending some time down there, just getting himself Rehoboth Beach, I think it is, in Delaware, where he spends a little bit of time, out there. He can't lift the little chair out of the beach, off of the beach because it's too heavy for him. But, takes off the old shirt and gallivants about. Still got his adult diapers on. All right, so 409-615-737-9986. I got a couple of ways I want to go here. Let's start here. Let's go to Eagle Pass, where the mayor of Eagle Pass, Texas, Mayor Rolando Salinas, who is a Democrat, is begging anyone from the federal government to help.
Our city here in Eagle Pass, we've been getting slammed with 2,000 to 3,000 people a day, and it's just an unfair, unethical situation. What's going on here in Eagle Pass, we feel ignored by the federal government.
Well, it's because you are ignored by the federal government, sir, because it is inconvenient for them to face the border crisis that they themselves created that was not going on during the tenure of Donald Trump. Secondarily, we've got Democrat Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson saying that the entire country's now at stake. Now, this dude is a self-avowed socialist. Listen to him.
The technical support that we receive from the federal government, we appreciate that. Work authorization to put people on a pathway to sustainability, I certainly appreciate that. And without real significant investment from our federal government, it won't just be the city of Chicago that won't be able to maintain this mission. It's the entire country that is now at stake. But in no way what the state of Texas is doing is helping the cause. As much as we recognize that there are challenges, significant challenges at the border, and we do need real substantive immigration reform and policies that allow us to have a structure and a pathway to citizenship. But again, sending buses all over the state of Illinois and all over the country is reckless and, quite frankly, is dangerous.
Okay, so they're saying the quiet part out loud that the entire goal is to get these individuals a pathway to citizenship so that they can vote. And I've been saying for years now, literally for years, that the calculus out of Washington, D.C. is simple, that if they get them on a pathway, if they tilt the numbers in these liberal states, they can get better representation in the House of Representatives. That's point one. Point two, eventually you're going to make the argument that these individuals have been in the country long enough that they ought to have citizenship. And the hope is once you do that, about 7 out of 10, maybe 8 out of 10, 7 to 7.5 out of 10 of every person that comes here will vote Democrat because they'll remember the individuals that brought them here, that allowed them to engage in illegal activity to come to the United States of America. And the Chicago mayor knows that, and he's saying as much. Now, as far as his complaining about getting busloads of illegal immigrants into his state and into his city, look, I love these liberal mayors and liberal governors who declare that their cities or their states are, quote unquote, sanctuary cities, and they love seeing the accolades pour in when they do so. Oh, they get patted on the back and they get talked about how humanitarian their city is and how wonderful the city is. And they only start being concerned when people actually start showing up. So it's all well and good to declare yourself a sanctuary city so long as no illegal aliens actually show up, or none in the types of numbers that you see in Texas and Arizona and California, and even by extension, Louisiana and Mississippi and Oklahoma and Missouri and Tennessee. Every state's a border state nowadays. Every state's a border state. But you hear, and this is an argument that I want to point out every time they do it, it is important to note, border security and immigration policy are two different things. Liberal Democrats do not like talking about border security because they cannot defend the lack of a policy regarding our southern border and the porous nature thereof. They love talking about immigration reform because people think they are the same thing. Well, we need comprehensive immigration reform. You know what they mean when they say comprehensive immigration reform? They mean blanket amnesty. They want to amnestize those illegal aliens that are already here because they believe that would benefit them greatly at the voting booth. That's what this is all about. They don't care about you. They don't care about illegal alien activity. They don't care about the criminals. They don't care about the drugs. It is as cut and dry as that. They care about the votes. The votes. The votes. Now, what the city of Chicago is feeling, what the city of New York and Mayor Eric Adams up there is what they're feeling the strain that the border states have been feeling for the last 2 decades, and certainly the last 3 years. And now that they're feeling that strain, what do we hear? Just put your ears to the political wind and listen to it from New York and Chicago and other sanctuary cities and sanctuary states like Illinois and California. What are they demanding? Free money, free money, free money. We need money from the federal government. The federal government's not properly funding us. Free money, free money, free money coming to us. And they'll probably get it, sadly, because the Republicans don't have the intestinal fortitude or the cojones, if you will, to stand up to them. Tim is next up in Columbia on the border issue. Hello, Tim. Welcome into the drive.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Hope you are.
Yeah, I am. I just don't understand why Congress is allowing this to happen. I mean, even the Republicans, to let these people come into our country and then take them and put them in the middle of our country, I don't understand why and how they get away with it. That's my thoughts.
Well, and I'll give you my thoughts on it too, Tim, and I'll let you continue to listen online. So here's the deal. This was started during the Obama administration when we saw a flood of illegal alien activity crossing the border during his tenure in office. And Republicans began howling about it to a certain degree. And there were several lawsuits that were filed against Barack Obama based on the Dreamers. And if you remember DACA, the deferred action, I forget what the nomenclature was. Because of what Barack Obama tried to do extracurricular to the Constitution of the United States and extracurricular to any passage of legislation by the House, there was a lawsuit filed against him. And largely the courts have been loath to enter into a disagreement between the legislative branch and the executive branch. But what the executive branch does when they get into court, they essentially lie. During the Obama administration and now during the Biden administration, what they say is, and things have changed slightly, and I'll tell you how they changed, but during the Obama administration, the premise of their defense was, we're doing the best we can. Hey, Your Honor, We're trying as best we can. We know that hundreds of thousands of illegal aliens are coming into the United States of America, and those numbers are quaint by today's standards. We understand that all of these illegal aliens are flooding into our country, and we feel real bad about it, and we understand that it's against the law, but we're doing the best we can. What are we supposed to do? And judges in those cases determined that the legislative branch cannot decide the manner by which the executive branch executes the laws passed by the legislative branch. Now, that doesn't satisfy the caller. That doesn't satisfy me. That doesn't satisfy rational people, because we know that the Obama administration did not do everything they could. And we know the Biden administration is not doing everything they can. But that's what their claim is. They claim in courts of law with their hands on a Bible that they're doing their best. We're trying our best, sir, ma'am. And the courts throw their hands up and say they're trying their best. What they are doing is flaunting the law. Now, what has changed slightly, instead of talking about DACA or the Dreamers, we're now talking about asylum. And those that are coming from other countries, while we very well know that they're not seeking asylum in any traditional format or by any traditional definition, it is what they claim, and they've learned to claim it. And the Biden administration just allows them to get away with it. We ought not to need Title 42 to turn these people back home. We need immigration reform, but not the type of immigration reform that the Democrats want. They want blanket amnesty. What we need is a blanket clamp down on immigration until such time as we solve the southern border crisis, which, once again, are two different things. Border security and immigration policy are two different things. Susanna's next up on the show. Hey, Susanna, welcome into the drive. Thank you for calling.
It's good to be on. I really love hearing you every day. I normally can't call in because I'm at work listening to you guys for 10 hours, but I just wanted to talk about what you're talking about with the border security. I just think it's horrible that we're letting just everybody in. I think nothing's going to change until there's a big terrorist attack that's bigger than 9/11, and then the media and the politicians aren't going to be able to hide that they let armies of terrorists in from other countries, and that all this sex trafficking and drugs is coming in. They're not going to be able to hide it because the magnitude is going to be so big. But I think it's horrible, and I really appreciate you being on the radio and sharing everything.
Susanna, thank you for the call. I mean, it is a disturbing conversation point, to say the least. But I don't disagree with you at all. Sadly, it took a 9/11 type attack to draw awareness to the very real dangers that we were facing in the United States of America with radical Islamic terrorism. Sadly, it is not the farm worker. It is not the construction worker, despite the fact that I believe that a flood of those individuals will ultimately be a drain on the American economy. That's not my focus when it comes to immigration. My focus are the bad guys. With every 100 people that come across the southern border, with every 1,000 people, with every 10,000 people, with every 100,000 people, and it's expected that the numbers will reach about 280,000 in December alone. Over 250,000 illegal aliens. That's known encounters in December alone, making the total for the last 3 months of the year somewhere in the neighborhood of 750 to 800,000 illegal aliens into the country, dispersed about the country. Add that 800,000 to an already 8 million over the last 4 years. You know, when we started talking about this issue some 20 years ago, and it's been that long, I mean, even longer than that, really. I understand this has been going on, Simpson Mazzoli, 1984, 1985, the debate between Ronald Reagan, president at the time, and the Democrat-led House of Representatives ultimately led to the Democrats agreeing to border security if the president would amnestize some 3 million illegal aliens that were known to be in the United States at the time. The president, Ronald Reagan, agreed to do so. on the promise that the Democrat-run House of Representatives would fully fund border security. This was in, 84, 85? My year might be off by 1 or 2. Maybe it was 86. One way or the other, the amortization of those $3 million did happen. The border security funding never did. The Democrats lied to the president, and they're lying to you right now. And since that time, we've been discussing this issue. And at the time that we started talking about it, when I first started in talk radio in 2000, some 24 years ago, we were talking, 12 million illegal aliens, 13 million illegal aliens? Was that thunder?
I'm not sure what that was.
I don't know what. Is it?
I think it was something in the building.
Sounded scary.
Yeah.
Kind of scared me. What do you think that number is now? What do you think the numbers? It's got to be 30 million. I'm spitballing when I say that, but if it's 30 million, that represents some 10% of the 10% of the population of the United States of America consists of illegal aliens. Imagine how the dynamics of the country would change should we, without consideration for whether or not they love their country, this country, amnestize those individuals and give them full voting rights. That's the point. Consider that possibility because that's what the Democrats want. It is 422, Super Talk 99.7, WTN.
President Biden negotiating the release of more hostages in Gaza. Today's Money News. Those stories, 4:30, Super Talk, 99.7 WTN.
I'm just looking at some of the responses based on our discussion some moments ago about Taylor Swift's impact on the Kansas City Chiefs. Chefs.
Oh, yeah.
The Kansas City Chefs, pardon me. I hope she buys the team, breaks up with him, and trades his overrated blank to the Giants. Wow. LOL. I mean, that's a strong take. Do you hope is that, wait, Mac, what's your telephone number? Are you 7866? Was this you?
I'm hijacking the text line.
I've heard that some are suggesting that Travis. How old is Travis Kelce?
34.
I mean, is he falling off a cliff here?
He's got over 1,000 yards. So and he missed a game. He's been hurt twice. So yeah, 34 over 1,000 yards.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think so. For a sixth straight season, seventh straight season.
We're just talking. We're just talking. Don't get mad.
No, it's okay.
You're getting mad over there.
No, he's not. He's having a down year. But
4755. Just respond to this. It's Mac's fault.
Fair.
And this is my favorite. 9033 says Taylor Swift is a 100% man.
What?
What are we even doing?
What's going on?
I don't understand what's happening.
No context, no evidence, just that's it.
Well, I did abbreviate the text. Let me read the full text.
Oh, okay.
So I'll give you a little more context here. Here's the full text from 9033. Don't make me laugh. Taylor Swift is a 100% man. 100% not a girl. So
that clarification at the end really made it, really sold it. That's good.
3 exclamation points behind that not a girl.
Must be true then.
It must be real. I mean, you got 3 exclamation points. You don't get 3 exclamation points for nothing. So there you go. I call, this was another super text that came in. I call BS. You gentlemen on the radio know for a fact y'all have wives that when you first meet your bride-to-be, you were all about that gal. You couldn't concentrate. You couldn't keep a clear thought in your head on a daily basis. You could not do your daily duties. So I believe Travis Kelce is certainly distracted.
Oh, my goodness.
But if the relationship goes the distance, then well worth it. Would you agree with that? If
That's
he's
fair,
distracted and he drops a couple of passes and you guys, I don't know, are one and done in the playoffs, is it well worth it if they have a long-lasting relationship, Taylor and Travis?
The Chiefs fan in me is saying, hell no. But I do like Travis, so that's fine.
From his point of view, I mean, he's got the big bucks in his pocket either way. So
oh yeah, he's killing it. He's got 2 Super Bowls. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. Yeah,
but she's not going to want to be with a big loser.
Well, I hadn't stopped her before now.
I don't know about all of that. Let me see. Can I name, this is going to make me proud of myself. Can I name one relationship that Taylor Swift has been in? And she's been in a bunch of them,
a bunch
right?
of them. Yeah,
bunch of them. I think I can name one.
You've got this.
I think I've got one. Wasn't she with John Mayer?
That's it.
Yeah.
That's the one I expected you to get.
Not bad.
Yes.
I think that's the most famous guy, other than maybe Travis Kelce, that she's been with, I think.
I had a friend of mine back in Birmingham, Alabama, who was a part of an alternative rock station they were part of the group that kind of discovered John Mayer. And you know what she told me about John Mayer?
What?
Very stinky.
Stinky?
Mm-hmm.
Smelly guy, huh?
Yeah, stinking guy. He didn't believe in deodorant.
I could see that.
Yeah.
He kind of looks like he's got BO.
Yeah, he's one of those. Yeah, he's one of these guys that thought that if you rub crystals on your armpits, that guy. Come on.
Well, his body is a wonderland. So
I had a friend of mine that did a parody of that song about dating a large chick and calling your body as a blubberland.
Oh.
I'm not vouching for it. I'm not supporting it. I'm not endorsing it. I am reporting. I'm just reporting the news, friends. It is 4:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
It's 4:30. I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. Right now, 51 degrees, sunny in Nashville. Pretty nice. Going to get a little chillier here tonight. Expecting some rain showers that could turn into freeze, snow. Your latest forecast traffic report lets you know all about it. Just ahead, 5 minutes. President Biden spoke to Qatari officials to negotiate the release of more hostages, and a top aide also met with U.S. officials to discuss more aid into Gaza. Elizabeth Schulze is in the U.S. Virgin Islands traveling with the president.
The two leaders emphasized the urgent need to try to get the remaining hostages out. The White House said that, of course, includes the Americans who are still being held hostage. Remember that Qatar was the critical intermediary in the hostage negotiations for that first ceasefire. Qatar and Egypt together helped broker that deal to get the hostages out and to have that ceasefire in place. And it comes as there's this ongoing discussion over another ceasefire to try to get that in place while also getting more aid into Gaza.
And Israel says it aims to free more than 100 hostages who remain in captivity. Now over to the money news. Here's Dave Packer.
Stocks end up the day on Wall Street on this shortened week of trading. With just 3 days left in the year, major indexes are on track to post hefty annual gains. The Dow added 111 points, the Nasdaq gained 25, the S&P 500 rose about 7 points. Despite inflation, MasterCard's spending poll says holiday sales are up 3% this year compared to 2022. That's still slower than the nearly 8% increase from last year. Shoppers were most interested in clothes, food, and restaurants. New York Times stock rose after the company filed suit against Microsoft and its artificial intelligence program OpenAI, fighting to end the practice of using its stories to train chatbots. Online retailer Zulily is closing down, saying they couldn't salvage the business. The Seattle-based company says it's trying to fill pending orders in the next 2 weeks or customers will be refunded. A study from Harvard says social media companies collectively made over $11 billion in U.S. advertising revenue off minors last year.
And that is the latest news. Traffic and weather next. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
Super Talk 99.7 WTN, Matt Murphy and you. It is The Drive. Brian Wilson's off this week. Normally you hear me from noon until 3. If you're not able to catch my show on a regular basis, what are you doing with your life? Need to readjust your priorities. Oh, I've got to work. There's other jobs. Come on now. Joan Jones doing a great job from noon until 3 this week. I told her that. Her second day, man, oh, man, she already sounds as comfortable as can be. We've lots to discuss. I have yet to get into the latest with regard to House Republicans investigating whether President Joe Biden was involved in his son's hunter's decision, I think I'm saying that right, to defy a subpoena for deposition. We'll get into that a little bit more. And there was a Michigan Supreme Court ruling that we'll talk about in the 5 o'clock hour that has some significance with regard to Donald Trump on the ballot. They have made a decision as to whether or not he is allowed on the ballot for the Republican primary. In the meantime, would it surprise you if I told you that your federal government wastes money? Probably not. I'm going to play you this story from Reason. Reason.com is a great libertarian think tank and a valuable resource. They do a lot of great number crunching with regard to the waste of quote-unquote fake money by the federal government. And there is such a tremendous amount of waste. There has been a push during the Biden administration to focus on electric vehicles and to move away from the internal combustion engine. That push includes Congress spending $7.5 billion on electric vehicle chargers. That $7.5 billion came out 2 years ago. This was a part of the Infrastructure Act that Biden pushed through with the help of Pete Buttigieg, our nation's transportation czar. Would it surprise you to know that nobody really knows what they spent the money on? Here's Reason.com.
2 years ago, Congress spent $7.5 billion on electric vehicle chargers. How many have been built? 1. That's $7.5 billion for this. This story makes me want to yell. Show me the money! Because where did the money go? Seriously, where did it go? There are so many stories like this, where government will spend billions on projects with little or nothing to show for them. Like the Pentagon, which can account for $220 billion in gear given to contractors, and they failed 6 audits in a row. Or Biden's $42 billion broadband project, even though more than 90% of Americans already have access to high-speed internet. The VA bought 10,000 iPhones for $8 million. Never used 8,500 of them. And never forget, $400 billion in COVID aid was either wasted or stolen. So the next time the feds propose to spend a bunch of money on a big new shiny stimulus project, even if it sounds great, don't forget how government spending projects really work.
$7.5 billion on electric vehicle chargers 2 years ago, and they've built one. If that doesn't anger you, I don't know what to tell you. There's such an extreme and intense waste of money at the risk of our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren's future. I do not expect that our country will live much past me. I mean, I mean that. It's not hyperbolic. I'm not saying something extreme for effect. I sincerely believe that. Now, I understand that saying that doesn't give anybody any warm and fuzzies during the holiday season. I'm not trying to be a downer. But this level of extreme spending toward no good end, and you heard some of the examples there. Our federal government bought 10,000 iPhones for $8 million, and they didn't use 8,500 of them. $400 billion waste, fraud, and abuse through COVID spending. COVID was just a boondoggle. It was free money, free money, free money, free money for everybody. And then $7.5 billion on electric vehicle chargers 2 years ago, and one has been built. One. We're not making that up. That's real. It is an unbelievable and existential threat to the United States of America, this concept that we can continue to spend money unabated, and the hockey stick effect. I mean, if you look at the graph, It's frightening. I encourage you to go look at the debt clock. Go to debtclock.org. Hold on. I thought it was debtclock.org. That says it's not secure. World Debt Clock. Hold on. Or maybe national debt. USDebtClock.org. I had the wrong thing. Go to USDebtClock.org. You want to be depressed? The amount of money that the United States of America, we are now at, just to give you a sense of where we are, and I don't want to crunch too many numbers during the holidays for you. Our U.S. national debt is now $33.951 trillion. The debt per citizen is over $100,000. The debt per taxpayer over $250,000, $259,949 to be precise. The total amount of United States debt, that's unfunded debt and interest, is an astronomical $103 trillion and growing. The interest alone on the debt is $703 billion annually. That, along with defense, Social Security, and Medicare, are our four biggest expenses for the federal government. But that doesn't stop the federal government from overspending at a clip of over $1 trillion a year. And if you use the debt time machine, and, from it's 2023, almost 2024. By the way, we're about to go the other way, and this will frighten the hell out of you because I can extrapolate where we are and where we're going by 2027, 4 years from now. But in 2020, 3 years ago, our national debt was $27 trillion. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. That's $7 trillion in 3 years. If you go back a little bit further, let's say 2012, some 12 years ago, our national debt was $16 trillion. We've more than doubled our national debt in just over a decade. Unless and until the United States of America demands that our federal spending comport itself with the amount of money that we bring in, we are doomed. It is the greatest existential threat that nobody wants to deal with, that nobody wants to talk about. It is an exercise in futility to the point that I hesitate even bringing it up. Because it's all fun and games. It's a segment on a radio station. It's a segment on a radio show. And we can talk about it and we can scream about it and we can have callers call in and, we got to do something. Why are we not doing something about it? If Americans were to demand it, and I think I know the answer because we're selfish. And I'm sorry to point fingers at those of you who understand the nature of the problem that I'm discussing, but I'm talking broadly. As a society, we are so destructively selfish that we allow this to go on. We allow the Washington, D.C. elites to do this because we get some milk and honey as a result. It is time to eat our financial peas. It is time to eat our veggies. You want to compare it to something? Let me compare it to this. I'll drive it close to home. I have been overeating during the holidays, and I've gained weight, and I lost so much good weight. It is time to get back to business. Do I want to? No. Do I want to keep eating the cookies and eating the cake and eating the holiday snacks and treats? Of course I do. But I understand that ultimately, while it tastes good today, I'm going to pay for it tomorrow. Well, tomorrow is here as a nation. And we're about to pay for it. Somehow I feel as if people think that the recompense for the sins of what we are doing with regard to our national debt is somewhere way down the road, way down into the future. I understand why politicians don't deal with it because the voters today don't demand that they do because they look at it as way down the road. And the politicians today think, well, I'll be long gone by the time all of these chickens come home to roost. Well, I would suggest to you the chickens are home to roost. Our national debt is $34 trillion today. You know what it's expected to be in 2027, 4 years from now? $45.5 trillion at the current rate of growth and spending. At some point, the apple cart tips over. And when that happens, you're going to have rioting in the streets. The consequences will be real. Now, that's a downer, and I don't mean to be a downer, but it is true. In the meantime, $7.5 billion with a B, not million. You know, I remember a time when $1 million was a lot of money. $1 million is not a lot of money anymore. $7.5 billion on electric vehicle chargers. And they managed to build one. I remember a story, and I might get a couple of the details wrong on this story, but I remember a story where, you know, there's a problem with San Francisco and pooping in the streets, right? There's a lot of human feces in the streets. There's a lot of fecal matter going on in the streets of San Francisco. And so one individual decided that they wanted to try to do a little bit of their part to help. And they donated a toilet for the homeless. Now, this toilet had to be self-cleaning. It had to be self-contained. It had to be graffiti-proof. It had to be damage-proof. In other words, you don't want people roughing the thing up days after it's installed. And so this stainless steel, beautiful city street toilet, porta potty, if you will, was going to cost $2 million. A lot of money. But this benefactor decided that they were willing to do this to prove the point that we can make these things happen, we can make these things and put them on our streets, and we can do our small part into cleaning up. So the total amount of the toilet was donated. It was still going to cost the city of San Francisco $2.5 million in permitting fees. The cost of the toilet was $2 million. The cost of installing the toilet, going through the process, filing the paperwork, going through the city was going to be $2.5 million. This is government bureaucracy run amok. And it's tragic because all of us feel helpless. Invariably, when I have this discussion, and it comes up from time to time because I'm obsessed with it. I admit that I'm obsessed with it. I'm obsessed with the fact that no one wants to deal with it. No one wants to do anything about it. It should be the number one priority of every politician in Washington, D.C. to reduce the amount of spending. But they don't get reelected that way because the American population, once again, we're selfish. We somehow believe that this will magically disappear, that it magically doesn't exist. And I'm sad to note, I bring it up, silence. Crickets. And I don't blame you for the silence of the crickets because you don't feel like there's anything that you can do about it. Because after all, we elect good conservative people to go to Washington, D.C. Do we now? Those good conservative people just voted another $1 trillion in the National Defense Authorization Act that included funding for abortion travel and transgender surgeries. We need to start drawing the line somewhere. On that happy note, 4:51, it is Super Talk 99.7 WTN and The Drive. I'll tell you what, I'll give you a good news story coming up in just a moment.
Hey folks, Paul Winkler here. One of the things that we see from time to time, well, way too often, is this. Let's say that you go to a financial advisor and they say, hey, you need to set up an investment portfolio, and what we need to do is we need to have some of your money in stocks or mutual funds or ETFs or something like that, and we need to have something fixed or guaranteed in your investment portfolio that'll protect you against the market downturns. And quite often what they're talking about, they may not use this word, but often what they're talking about is putting your money into some sort of an annuity, like an indexed annuity or something like that, or a fixed annuity. And what they're doing is they're saying, hey, let's put your money in both of these, which sounds really good. And you should. And typically in an investment portfolio, you do want to have fixed investments and stocks as well in the portfolio to protect against inflation. But here's what happens when you manage a portfolio. Let me use a really, really simple example. Let's say I have a portfolio and I got stocks in there. Then I have my fixed income, my bonds in the portfolio as well. And let's say I have half my money in each. When stocks really do well, what we want to do is they're going to be overweighted in my portfolio. I own too much of them because they've done well compared to bonds. It was supposed to be half and half, and now maybe it's 70% stocks and 30% bonds, let's say, or something like that. So I want to sell some of this and buy some of that to bring it back to 50-50 and back and forth throughout time. Well, the problem is when you're managing a portfolio and rebalancing in that way, bringing it back to the original portfolio mix of half and half in my example, I'm going to have to incur a trading cost or a commission or a back-end surrender with the annuity. It doesn't make any sense to use that product in this particular manner. Why do people do it? Well, the reason quite often is this. Commissions are very high with these products. And a lot of firms, they actually require their advisors to recommend a certain amount of annuities for every person that walks in the door. Now, typically annuities are used for a different purpose. They were actually designed for a totally different purpose. And that was distribution toward the end of life. When somebody looks like they're going to run out of money, they're annuitized. Now, let me tell you something. One study showed there was only like 5% of annuities are ever used in that fashion. Most often they're sold as an accumulation vehicle like this, and they were never really designed for that purpose. If you want to learn more, call us for a free 15-minute phone call or go to our website, paulwinkler.com. The number 615-851-1950 or paulwinkler.com. We don't do anything on commission, and we like to rail against these types of things and help investors do what is in their best interest. paulwinkler.com.
Hostages still being held in Gaza, an increase in shoplifting in the mid-state. Michigan Supreme Court today rejecting an appeal to bar former President Donald Trump from the presidential ballot, and some health news you need to know. Those stories coming up 5 o'clock, Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Why, thank you, Mac Maury. I've decided to troll Mac Maury after every news tease regarding the Kansas City Chiefs.
Let me escape.
I've decided to do so. But you're getting a bit of positive response on the super text line, Mac Maury, kind of defending Travis Kelce and the Kansas City Chiefs against my vicious assault, my vicious accusation that Kelce's performance has been negatively affected based on his relationship with Taylor Swift.
Your negative and baseless accusation. Yes,
that's exactly right. Yep. People are coming to your defense and to Travis Kelce's defense, suggesting that it is in no way connected to his relationship with Taylor Swift. It is, in fact, connected to his relationship with the COVID-19 vaccinations. And some of those commercials that he's doing that we see regularly on our television.
Yes.
So perhaps if he was more focused on football as opposed to, getting his double-up vaccine shot or whatever it is, or triple-up or quadruple-up, maybe that.
The jab.
Maybe that would help him if he's not so focused on the jab and more focused on, I don't know, his out routes or whatever. An Indiana man, here's some good news. Here's the good news that I promised you. An Indiana man crashed his truck on December 20th, had been trapped inside for nearly a week. Have you guys heard about this story? Incredible story of survival. So he was trapped inside of his truck for nearly a week, was found alive earlier this week on Tuesday, I guess that's yesterday, by two fishermen who happened to spot the wrecked vehicle. Here's the story. The fisherman, Navardo de la Torre, and his father-in-law, Mario Garcia, they were walking along a riverbank looking for a fishing spot. They saw a crashed truck under an overpass on I-94 as they were walking along Salt Creek in Portage, Indiana, looking for fishing holes, as I mentioned. They initially believed when they looked inside of the crashed vehicle that they saw a dead person. Now, I want you to put yourself in the place of Navardo de la Torre and Mario Garcia for just a second. They thought this man was dead. There was no movement. Garcia went out to touch him, and as he touched him, the guy turned around and spoke to him. I would have...
Whoa.
I would have pooped my pants. I think I would have pooped my pants. If I think, oh my gosh, this guy's dead. Look at him, he's dead. I went to touch him and he turned around. It almost killed me because it was kind of shocking. He said he was alive, very happy to see us. I've never seen relief like that. He says that he tried yelling and screaming for several days. Nobody could hear him. It was quiet, just the sound of the water. The two Good Samaritans called 911. First responders rushed to the scene. He had been trapped in his truck, pinned inside of his truck. 27-year-old man by the name of Matthew Riem was headed westbound on I-94. His truck left the roadway, had been trapped for 6 days. Wow. Could not reach his cell phone.
Dang.
It is indeed, and I'm not saying this as a joke. I'm saying this sincerely. That is a Christmas miracle, no question. There's some good news for you. Halfway home on the drive on this Wednesday edition. Back in a moment after the news with Mac Morey. Stand by.
Five o'clock. I'm Mac Morey with your top stories, and it's 50 degrees in Music City. Going to get cooler. Chance for rain here tonight. Could turn into some snow. We'll let you know about it. Weather forecast, traffic report headed your way in 5 minutes. U.S.-Israeli citizen Hirsch Goldberg Poland, who's being held captive in Gaza, was supposed to get a flight today to start a planned trip to Southeast Asia. The 23-year-old was abducted by Hamas from the Nova Music Festival. Family and friends today gathered at Ben Gurion Airport in central Israel with banners urging the government to bring Hirsch home. Flyers were also printed up. Here's Rachel Goldberg Poland, Hirsch's mother.
They're putting them on every single seat in the airplane that he was supposed to be flying on today. And so we just came here with a group of 50 friends to sing some songs for Hirsch and to give the traveler's prayer. That's traditional Jewish people say a prayer before you go on a long journey.
And Israel says its aim is to free more than 100 hostages who remain in captivity. Shoplifting in Tennessee News 2 says that based off of data from Metro Police, that shoplifting in Nashville has increased by about 30% from this year to last. In the West Precinct alone, shoplifting's increased by nearly 50%. Other parts of the mid-state saw rises as well. For Murfreesboro, there were over 170 more shoplifting cases, and in Henderson and Mount Juliet, also seeing an increase. And Michigan's Supreme Court today rejected an appeal to bar former President Donald Trump from the state's 2024 primary ballot for his role in the January 6th Capitol riot. The court said they did not believe the question should be reviewed by their court. This comes days after Colorado's Supreme Court decided to disqualify Trump from their primary. Aaron Katursky reports.
Whether the 14th Amendment applies to our modern day politics and specifically January 6th, the question is, should former President Trump be disqualified for engaging in insurrection after he previously took an oath to defend the Constitution? And the Michigan court didn't even hear the challenge to a lower court decision, which said this is a political question, not one for judicial review. And so the Michigan Supreme Court seemed to think that's the right answer.
And Trump came out on Truth Social celebrating this decision, saying it's a desperate gambit by the Democrats and that it's likely the U.S. Supreme Court will be the ones making the ultimate decision. Some health news you need to know. With Christmas behind us and New Year's ahead, Americans are in the middle of the deadliest week of the year for heart attacks. Doctors say two peaks they see in heart attacks and deaths are December 25th and January 1st. Stress, overindulging in food and drink, plus the cold weather can contribute. That is the latest news. Traffic and weather on the way. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
Awaken 180 is my solution for weight loss.
Laughing, learning, friendships. Not the words normally associated with trying to lose weight. But with Awaken 180, you're not trying. Weekly weight loss while gaining the tools to keep it off. Free support for life, friends for life. Learn how over 17,000 clients succeeded with the solution for weight loss.
Awaken 180!
Yes, indeed. Just past 5 o'clock, 5:06 to be precise. My name is Matt Murphy, not Brian Wilson. Brian off this week, spending some time with family and friends. I'm normally on from noon until 3. Joan Jones in for me, and I'm in for Brian. Happy to be here until 7 o'clock tonight, or whenever they throw me off the radio, whichever comes first. By the way, a big-time update on Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift coming up just after the quarter-hour news tease from Mac Morey in the newsroom. Big time update. I have some brand new breaking news regarding Travis and Tay-Tay and some of the stuff going on later on this week with regard to his podcast. Very exciting. Wow. Very exciting stuff. And that's late breaking news. I'm frankly a little bit surprised that Mac Morey's not broken in with this story earlier, but I've got it. Never you fear. I have it for you later on today. Also, Mac Morey's Wide World of Sports coming up at 5:25. We'll do that, even in the absence of Brian Wilson. After all, it's become a drive tradition on Supertalk 99.7 WTN. The Michigan Supreme Court, as you heard mentioned in our newscast, sided with a lower appeals court finding that Donald Trump could, in fact, big win for Trump, remain on state ballots despite accusations the former president violated the 14th Amendment of the Constitution by engaging in, quote, rebellion or insurrection, end quote. According to the Michigan Court of Appeals, a ruling dismissing the case against Trump At the moment, the only event about to occur is the presidential primary election. As explained, whether Trump is disqualified is irrelevant to his placement on that particular ballot. So they're leaving open the possibility, and I'll get down into the story here in a moment, they're leaving open the possibility that they could revisit this should Donald Trump be selected by Republican primary voters to be their candidate on the general election ballot. Thankfully, I believe the United States Supreme Court is going to weigh in on all of these cases long before any of that's decided. Of course, we all know that last Tuesday, the Colorado Supreme Court ruled Trump was, quote, ineligible to appear on the state's 2024 ballot, citing, quote, it would be a wrongful act under the election code, specifically Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, ratified after the Civil War. Now, we've discussed this. I won't belabor the point, but that section says no person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president and vice president or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or any state who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States or a member of any state legislature or as an executive or chief, or rather an executive or judicial officer of any state to support the Constitution of the United States shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid and comfort to the enemies thereof. Ultimately, this is decided inasmuch as the state of Colorado has determined for themselves on their own, without a jury trial, without even any charges being brought up against Donald Trump, that Donald Trump was engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the United States of America. Now, the move in Michigan is obviously a victory for Trump. The move in Colorado led the Trump campaign to announce it would file a legal challenge. A spokesperson for the former president said Trump and his staff have, quote, full confidence that the United States Supreme Court will rule quickly in our favor and put an end to these un-American lawsuits. The plaintiffs, Free Speech for People, it sounds like the Human Fund, doesn't it?
I was thinking the same thing. Money for people.
The Human Fund, money for people. A generous donation has been given in your name for the Human Fund. The plaintiffs, Free Speech for People, failed to identify, quote, any analogous provision in the Michigan election law that requires someone seeking the office of President of the United States to attest to their legal qualification to hold the office. The pressure group mounted a similarly unsuccessful challenge in Minnesota. It has also recently filed a case in Oregon. So this is an anti-Trump organization, Free Speech for People, in charge of engaging in some of these anti-American activities, attempting to prevent the voters from voting for a candidate of their own choosing in their presidential primary contests. Primary contests that don't, I understand that we think that they are interrelated with the general election, but they are less interrelated than you would believe. Now, I had a conversation last night on Red Eye Radio with regard to how many candidates do you think will ultimately be on the ballot in the state of Tennessee? Or in any state in the union? You have 50 separate contests, right? There is not one national election for president of the United States. There are 50 separate elections determining how your electors will be voting when it comes to the Electoral College, and ultimately those individuals determine who will the president of the United States be. I have a feeling that it will not just be 3. I think it will be 4. I believe, obviously, Donald Trump will be on the ballot. He will be the Republican nominee, absent some unforeseen circumstance, dramatic events of a potentially traumatic nature. Only that would prevent him from being on the ballot, in my opinion. I'll get to Joe Biden in a second. Obviously, Robert F. Kennedy, I believe, will be there in the state of Tennessee, will be there across the United States of America. I think he'll get on most, if not all, 50 ballots. And I believe that Joe Manchin is strongly considering, and if I had to bet you today, I would bet you that he enters the race under the No Labels Party. Currently, the No Labels Party, and we had several people on my radio show from noon until 3 call me with this. Several individuals are saying that the No Labels Party is going around the state of Tennessee gathering ballot signatures, gathering signatures in order to get on the ballot. So I believe that will happen. So I think there will be 4 main competitors for president of the United States. There's always an also-ran or 2. The Libertarians oftentimes throw a candidate up. The Libertarian Party is so disjointed and out of sorts. I don't even call myself a Libertarian with a big L. I call myself a Libertarian with a small L because I don't want to be associated with that group. Because sadly, they can't get their crap together. I would love to be associated with them because I believe in that form of government. I am a small L Libertarian, but I can't get behind the party. Too much dope. I mean, they can't get around the hookers and blow label that gets hung on the Libertarians all the time. Which, by the way, my new favorite Christmas book. We got it in the mail. We got it late for Christmas, but it's Hookers and Blow Save Christmas.
Is it written by Hunter?
No, it is Hookers is a tow truck. And Blow is a snowblower truck. And they're going around their community, and they were needed to help get the presents, I think, to the youngsters in the orphanage or something or another for Christmas morning. And so Hookers and Blow saved Christmas.
Oh, a heartwarming tale.
It really is a very nice tale. It's a lovely story that we put under the Christmas tree for our family. All right, Max is in Springfield next on Super Talk 99.7 WTN and The Drive. Hello, Max. Good afternoon.
Matt, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm fabulous. Glad you called.
Well, love your show. I love everyone on WTN. Just want to make a point that relates back to your previous topic about waste of government money. I have been incensed by the ads by Andy Ogles, who touts himself as the best thing since sliced bread, particularly as it relates to cutting government spending and reining in government abuses, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the tagline, which is required on all political ads, is paid for by official funds authorized by the House of Representatives. He would be more honest in saying paid for by your tax dollars. And it just incensed me that he is using our money to promote himself as the champion of reducing government waste.
You know, I've not listened to the ad closely enough to be able to relate to you what exactly it says. Are you sure that it is taxpayer dollars? I would be surprised to find out that it's taxpayer dollars being used for a political advertisement.
It says paid for by official funds authorized by the House of Representatives. And I tried to contact his office. I am not in his district. I don't know Mr. Ogles. I've been impressed by what I have heard in the media, which of course is to be somewhat, tempered. But but I have been so disappointed that I thought he was such a conservative person. But what else? Where does the House of Representatives get dollars to authorize for these commercials other than from the taxpayers?
It is my understanding that taxpayer dollars would not be allowed to engage in any political campaign of that sort. So I don't want to speculate further until I hear the end of the ad, and something tells me, based on looking at Chris Webber across the way there, that he's currently trying to find the ad and trying to isolate the last portion of the ad.
Yeah, it does say exactly as Max has quoted. Yeah.
See, I don't know, but
and it's not just one ad; it's multiple ads. There are 3 or 4 or 5 of them that address different things: how many bills he's presented, what all he's done, and how he's championing reducing government spending, etc.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard the ads. I can't quote them chapter and verse, but I always assumed, without listening too closely, Max, that these advertisements were being paid for out of his political campaign. I assumed that this was an early effort for him to shore up his primary campaign and to ensure that he doesn't get primaried first time around out of the gate, right? I assume that, but maybe that's a dangerous assumption.
I agree. I would encourage you to look into it. But the other thing is that he, the tagline says it's paid for by House of Representative funds. Those are our tax dollars, and it just. I tried to contact his office by email, and they had an AI response. I mean, they were answering my questions immediately before anyone could have even considered them, and they admitted it was AI. And his excuse for the AI's response to "I'm concerned about using these tax dollars to promote yourself" was, well, there are many other people who do the same thing. And so that, again, made me concerned. Again, I don't know Mr. Ogles, but if
I'll try to contact Andy and get some answers.
If he says I'm different than everybody else and his AI response is everybody else is doing it, then he's saying I'm the same as everybody else. Just a concern, just another waste of our taxpayer dollars.
I would, I do not believe, Max, and I don't doubt what you're saying is so. I do not believe that it is permissible to use taxpayer money to promote a political candidate anywhere. But
you may be absolutely right, Matt. And
it's a good question. I mean, I want to know what this means now that you've brought it up. So we're going to try to find out the answer to all of this.
May I say one other thing?
Sure.
I get correspondence from my representatives in the mail, of course, paid by U.S. taxpayer dollars, and they say, we've done this, 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 and this, and this is a survey. What do you think about X, Y, and Z? And it's clearly a self-promotional piece of mail. And again, perhaps the funds are appropriated for communicating with constituents about issues, and maybe that's the excuse for doing this. But as I said, his response online was, there are other people that do the same thing, and it just. But I encourage you to look at it, Matt. And if I'm wrong, I apologize to Mr. Ogles. But if I'm not, shame on him.
Well, if you're not wrong, I got a big problem with Andy. So we'll find out. We'll get to the bottom of it, Max. Thank you for the call. I'm going to try to get Chris Webber to isolate the latter portion of the ad so that I can hear it with my own ears, so that we can figure out if it is a campaign fund used by House Republicans or if it is designated as some sort of money coming from the House of Representatives. It is my understanding, and I don't pretend to be an expert on campaign funding, but it's pretty basic, campaigning 101 that you can't use taxpayer dollars. You have to separate your campaign funds with your taxpayer money, using that for your office and to pay your support staff. And I do know that there is a clear and bright line between the two, between anyone that's offering service in an official capacity as a staff member for a House of Representatives member, and then those that are providing material or staff support for a political campaign. You've got to separate those two things. So it would shock me if what we're speculating is the case, but we'll find out. It's 521 Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
U.S. officials meeting with Mexico's president discussing the surge at the southern border. We take a look at holiday sales numbers and a man arrested outside of the U.S. Capitol yesterday. We tell you why. 5:30, Super Talk, 99.7 WTN.
Oh, yes, the real news is coming up at 5:30, but now it's a special time of day on the drive on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Despite the absence of Brian Wilson, who's spending some time with his family and friends wrapping up 2023, he'll be back in 2024. Our visit with Mac Morey remains. It is 5:26. It is time for the one and only Mac Morey's Wide, Wide World of Sports. But enough about the Chiefs. So... It's time for Mac Morey and the wide, wide world of sports on the drive on Super Talk 99.7 WT. And Mr. Morey, the floor is yours, sir.
Woo!
What do you got?
The crowd has not been here this holiday week. Usually we got a big crowd here.
People are busy.
People are okay. People are doing other stuff.
What do we normally have a crowd?
Yeah,
There's
a few folks out there.
There's a few guys. There's a few guys. Thank you. There's one guy out there. So we're actually going to move to the Chiefs' rival here, one of them, with some big news that came out today about the Denver Broncos. They decided to bench Russell Wilson for the remaining 2 games. Now, Russell Wilson's actually played pretty solid this year, opposite of last year where it was a complete debacle, travesty. That team was, just awful. They hired new coach Sean Payton, who had been retired for a couple years. He was previously the Saints head coach with Drew Brees, won a Super Bowl there. And he went to Denver to say, you know what, I'm going to fix this thing up. Me and Russell Wilson are going to figure this out. I'm going to bring him to the elite level of play that he once had. And he brought him to average level of play, which was good. He's a bottom 5 quarterback. And they still have a chance to make the playoffs. The Denver Broncos are not out of playoff contention, but they decided to sit Russell Wilson for the remaining 2 games because now they will not have to pay him $37 million extra on his contract due to a clause if they did sit him these last 2 weeks. So that's what they're doing. And basically this leaves all indications that they're going to release him after the season. And they're going to eat I could get the exact number, but millions, tens and tens, maybe even over $100 million of cap. They're going to eat it in this contract.
Wait, so explain to me, and if you don't know, that's cool, but what is the provision in his contract? So if they sit him for 2 weeks, there's some trigger in the contract that they don't have to pay him the full amount of money they owe him?
Yeah, so if Wilson plays and suffers an injury in the final 2 weeks of 2023, Denver will not be able to outright release him, which would you could avoid a $37 million payout that he would be due in March. So if you sit him these final 2 weeks, you basically say, okay, great, we don't have to pay him this $37 million in this contract. And basically, that's what's you're saying that we're going to cut him. And he signed last year before the season started, signed a 5-year, $242 million contract, a $50 million signing bonus.
Wow!
And they're eating that. They're eating that. Basically, all of that. They're admitting defeat. Sean Payton joined. He very obviously did not like Russell Wilson from the get-go. Didn't like his attitude, his sort of arrogance. And yeah, they've been clashing ever since. They had a decent season, made their way to playoff contention, and they are just.
This is a team that can still get to the playoffs.
Yes, they could. Slim chances, but if they were to win out, had a couple things go their way, they could absolutely make the playoffs.
Who's the backup quarterback?
Stidham. Yes, it could be Jarrett Stidham.
Jarrett Stidham. You go, Jarrett.
Yeah.
So. I guess I'm a little confused. The fear is if you play him the last 2 weeks and he gets hurt, then you can't avoid the $37 million.
You have to pay him that.
You have to pay him the money.
Yeah. So here are the details. Here we go. This is from CBS Sports.
All right, yes.
Wilson is currently signed through 2028. He's only guaranteed money through 2024. That said, his entire 2025 salary, $37 million, will be guaranteed if he remains on the Broncos roster at the start of next league year, which starts March 17th. So it is now probable that Denver will make a decision on the QB's future before then.
And they don't want him to get hurt the last 2 games, which would trigger other provisions within the contract that would screw all of this up.
And they would have to pay him that $37 million.
So by benching him, they're signaling, we're done with you.
We're done. It's over.
Wow.
It's over. And they started the season 1-5. They won 6 or 7 games in a row. Russell Wilson's been an average to an above average quarterback this season. He really has been kind of rejuvenated. And yeah, they have admitted, nope, we're done. And so this is maybe the worst contract of all NFL history.
If you're Russell Wilson, do you even bother showing up? I mean, wouldn't you just take your stuff and go home?
I think I would walk.
Yeah,
that's it. I'm done.
I mean, I think if I'm told you're going to be benched because we're moving on from you, I have a grown man conversation with Sean Payton, and I'm like, is this the reason you're doing this? I mean, because I think I saw where Sean Payton was making some sort of excuse to, we just want to see what we've got in Jarrett Stidham or something or another. Yeah. I mean, whatever.
Garbage.
I mean, that's,
Stop that.
You
want to see what we got in 35-year-old backup journeyman quarterback Jarrett Stidham. What do you know? Offensive aficionado Payton. No, you don't want to see that. No, so they're going to pay him $80 million over the course of 2 years just to get rid of him. Goodbye. And he'll hit free agency. I don't know if he'll be a starter. He played well enough to at least be vying for a starting position. We'll see how the QB market is. But I know the Titans are in the market for possibly a backup quarterback. I don't know how that would all work. I think Russell's still looking for a starting job, but he certainly doesn't need the money. Maybe he could come for a cheap contract.
Do you honestly think Russell Wilson would back somebody up with the attitude that he has? I don't think so.
No, but I don't think he's ever been presented with no options. If he really sat all free agency and he heard crickets for 2 or 3 months, is he going to choose not playing over at least having a chance? I don't know.
I mean, you see in Cleveland what a quarterback that has had experience with the right attitude can do for a football team.
Yes.
I mean, Joe Flacco, how in the world did that guy sit for the amount of time that he sat, considering what he's doing for the Browns?
He's had the best statistical 3-game stretch of his career. He was on his couch 2 months ago.
And what is he, 38?
37, I think. Yeah, 38.
My goodness, great. I mean, but that's
incredible.
all. I think that's all. I mean, it's obviously it's God-given ability and talent, but it's also attitude.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah.
He stayed ready.
Attitude. All right, you know what? You're lucky because we're really, really late for the real news, and I won't be able to tell you about the Kelsey brothers special guest star that they have on their new podcast. Maybe I'll do that at 5:45 or so. Oh yeah, big time star coming to their podcast. It's 5:32. Here's time for the real news on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
.533, I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. 49 degrees in Music City. Full weather forecast. Latest traffic report on the way in 5 minutes. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and other top U.S. officials traveling to Mexico to meet with Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador. The crisis at the southern border is atop the schedule for today, coming as another large caravan of migrants makes its way north. President Biden spoke with the Mexican president last week. Obrador saying the United States and Mexico need each other and need to work together on the issue. Elizabeth Schulze with more.
No question, this is a political liability for President Biden. He started the year making a trip to the southern border at the urging of so many Republicans in Congress. He went down and he said this is a priority for the administration. And now here we are. It's the end of the year, and this is still something that is clearly not resolved. The White House, by sending the Secretary of State to Mexico City, is making the assumption that this is something that they need to be taking seriously and something that the president knows he needs to take seriously as we head into an election year.
And in just 5 days last week, Border Patrol processed nearly 50,000 migrants who entered the United States illegally, with daily apprehensions surpassing 10,000 thrice. That's up from 6,400 average last month. And holiday sales, solid despite lingering effects of inflation. New numbers showing Americans spent more this year. Overall, consumer spending grew by 3.1% compared to the same time last year. But what are we actually buying? Well, it wasn't the fancy pair of earrings or new TVs. Jewelry and electronic purchases actually shrunk. Instead, shoppers went big on clothing, food, gatherings around the table. Spending at restaurants jumped up nearly 8%. And police arrested a man carrying a machete outside of the U.S. Capitol yesterday. Andy Field brings us some details from Washington.
Capitol Police spotted a 23-year-old man walking with a machete and knife on the plaza between the U.S. Capitol and Supreme Court. They arrested Jose Leonardo Marquez and charged him with carrying a dangerous and prohibited weapon on the Capitol grounds. Police say he was also carrying a brick, but immediately complied when told to drop all the weapons. Police say there's no evidence Marquez was targeting members of Congress.
And that is the latest news. Traffic, weather next. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
Indeed, it is The Drive. Matt Murphy in for Brian Wilson this afternoon, 20 until 6. Glad to have you with us. This midweek edition, Wednesday, December 27th. I know what day it is because I just looked it up. It's difficult to keep up this week between Christmas and New Year's. Plenty to do, plenty to discuss. I'd love to discuss it with you. 615-737-9986, either via the super text line or the phone line, 615-737-WWTN. So the House GOP, House Republicans, are currently investigating President Joe Biden. They've offered a formal impeachment inquiry, and they are now investigating whether or not President Biden was involved in his son Hunter Biden's scheme, that's how they're describing it, to defy his subpoena for deposition earlier this month. Conduct that they say, and I would agree, concur with it, constitutes an impeachable offense. House Oversight Committee and House Judiciary Committee and Ways and Means Committee are investigating whether, quote, sufficient grounds exist to draft articles of impeachment against President Joe Biden for consideration by the full House. The House formalized their inquiry earlier this month, as we well know. House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer and House Judiciary Committee Chair Jim Jordan penned a letter obtained by Fox News and me to White House counsel Edward Siskel, notifying him of the additional area of their investigation. Now, we obviously know some of the areas of investigation. What were the business entanglements between Joe Biden and Hunter Biden? How did those entanglements compromise Joe Biden as vice president of the United States? How are they compromising him as president of the United States of America? And it is believed that he is currently and still compromised as a result of some of said business entanglements, leading to the enrichment of Hunter and the kickbacks of 10% for the big guy. So now they are notifying them of additional areas of investigation in light of an official statement from the White House that President Biden. So here's where all of this comes from. When Hunter Biden was supposedly going before the House Oversight Committee, and he was to be deposed behind closed doors. Instead, he chose to hold a press conference on the Senate side in the, what did Brian call it, the swamp pit? Oh, Wilson.
Site.
The swamp site?
Yeah.
Yeah, swamp site. Over on the Senate side of things, where Wilson was single-handedly responsible for getting taxpayer money used to pave that thing. I'm going to turn this around somehow and blame Brian Wilson for wasting taxpayer dollars for the benefit of reporters who didn't want to stand in a muddy pit. Anyway, that said, he went to the swamp site and he gave this, dog and pony show press conference. I'm here. I'm ready to testify publicly, when he full well knew, as did his attorneys, that being deposed privately and testifying publicly are two completely different things. They suspect that the general public isn't aware of that. That's why we try to make you aware of that. Being deposed privately means that you can be questioned repeatedly. I think it was Donald Trump Jr. that said that he went through 40 hours of private deposition by the Democrat-run House of Representatives. So the subpoenas that Hunter Biden flaunted, the White House came out with an official statement. I think it was Karine Jean-Pierre that said that Joe Biden, President Biden, was aware in advance that his son, Hunter, would knowingly defy two congressional subpoenas. And according to Comer and Jordan, we are compelled to examine as a part of our impeachment inquiry whether the president engaged in a conspiracy to obstruct Congress. I mean, this comes off to a certain degree as politicizing, but it's a very serious matter, folks. If the president of the United States had prior knowledge to the fact that his son was going to willingly defy a legally binding subpoena by Congress to come and testify privately before the House of Representatives. The president is not a superior branch of government. The executive branch is not somehow over the Congress of the United States. These are equal branches of government. The president has no authority to conspire with or to authorize his son to defy a legally binding subpoena. So Hunter Biden, and some of this you well know, He was scheduled to appear for a deposition before the House Oversight and Judiciary Committees earlier this month. He defied that subpoena. He appeared on Capitol Hill. He was over on the Senate side, at the swamp site. On December 13th, Mr. Biden did not appear for the deposition as required by the committee's subpoena. Instead, Mr. Biden appeared on the grounds of the U.S. Capitol with his attorney and Representative Eric Swalwell. He gave a lengthy public statement to an assembly of reporters in which he made several statements that are relevant to the House impeachment inquiry, including representations about his business activities, assertions about President Joe Biden's awareness, and financial involvement in these activities and attacks on the committee's inquiry. They got a little bit too cute, and now they're being called to the carpet as a result, and good for the House of Representatives. It seems like a little thing. It is a bigger than little thing, and it is a part of the overall case against Joe Biden in his official capacity as President of the United States. More to come on this front as we continue to examine it. By the way, Karine Jean-Pierre's statement, the White House press secretary Karine Jean-Pierre stated that President Biden was, quote, certainly familiar with what his son was going to say. Well, the question is then, what exactly was Joe Biden familiar with? Was he familiar that his son, did he have prior knowledge that his son had every intention to defy the subpoena? Did he agree that that was an appropriate course of action? Reporters have subsequently asked Joe Biden these questions, and they never get any answers from Sleepy Joe. He sloughs it off. Oh, they're all lies. They're all lies. Well, Comer and Jordan said that her statement, Karine Jean-Pierre's statement, suggests the president not only had advanced knowledge, but also was somewhat complicit in the decision-making that Hunter Biden would choose to defy congressional subpoenas. Now, for those who are thinking that it's all politics, there's a criminal code involved here. There is a section which states that it is unlawful to corruptly endeavor to influence, obstruct, or impede the due and proper exercise of the power of inquiry under any investigation or inquiry that is being held by any committee of the House or any joint committee of Congress. In other words, you can't run around, even if you're president of the United States, and suggest to your son that he just not show up. In doing so, you're influencing and obstructing an official act of Congress. They went on to write, in light of Ms. Jean-Pierre's statement, we're compelled to examine the involvement of the president in his son's scheme to defy the committee's subpoena. The committees have accumulated substantial evidence that Hunter Biden's business endeavors have improperly included his father, and the president has also made false claims about his knowledge and involvement of those schemes, as we well know. Let me tell you something. If the media had not decided to be completely 100% in the bag for the Democrats, I'm talking about ABC, NBC, CBS, #NeverCNN, New York Times, New York Slimes, Washington Compost, all of these garbage organizations, they have completely abandoned their charter to deliver fairly and accurately the news of the day and to break down and analyze that news fairly and accurately, regardless of political party or political influence or ideology. They've abandoned that premise. They ignore this story. And when they don't ignore the story, they couch it in terms of it being a nothing burger. It's not a nothing burger. The president isn't allowed to do these sorts of things against the will of an equal branch of government. Joe Biden is slimy. His entire family's slimy. And I pray God that the chickens come home to roost. Otherwise, the rule of law is lost. And you know what? I could blame the snake for being a snake, but I also blame those in the media organizations in Washington, D.C. that aren't doing their job. There's a good reason that many of them are going bankrupt or broke. 549 Supertalk 99.7 WTN. Your thoughts, 615-737-9986. Would love to hear from you. Matt Murphy in for Brian Wilson on The Drive.
Hey folks, Paul Winkler here. One of the things that we see from time to time, well, way too often, is this. Let's say that you go to a financial advisor and they say, hey, you need to set up an investment portfolio, and what we need to do is we need to have some of your money in stocks or mutual funds or ETFs or something like that, and we need to have something fixed or guaranteed in your investment portfolio that'll protect you against the market downturns. And quite often what they're talking about, they may not use this word, but often what they're talking about is putting your money into some sort of an annuity, like an indexed annuity or something like that, or a fixed annuity. And what they're doing is they're saying, hey, let's put your money in both of these, which sounds really good. And you should. And typically in an investment portfolio, you do want to have fixed investments and stocks as well in the portfolio to protect against inflation. But here's what happens when you manage a portfolio. Let me use a really, really simple example. Let's say I have a portfolio and I got stocks in there. Then I have my fixed income, my bonds in the portfolio as well. And let's say I have half my money in each. When stocks really do well, what we want to do is they're going to be overweighted in my portfolio. I own too much of them because they've done well compared to bonds. It was supposed to be half and half, and now maybe it's 70% stocks and 30% bonds, let's say, or something like that. So I want to sell some of this and buy some of that to bring it back to 50-50 and back and forth throughout time. Well, the problem is when you're managing a portfolio and rebalancing in that way, bringing it back to the original portfolio mix of half and half in my example, I'm going to have to incur a trading cost or a commission or a back-end surrender with the annuity. It doesn't make any sense to use that product in this particular manner. Why do people do it? Well, the reason quite often is this. Commissions are very high with these products. And a lot of firms, they actually require their advisors to recommend a certain amount of annuities for every person that walks in the door. Now, typically annuities are used for a different purpose. They were actually designed for a totally different purpose. And that was distribution toward the end of life. When somebody looks like they're going to run out of money, they're annuitized. Now, let me tell you something. One study showed there was only like 5% of annuities are ever used in that fashion. Most often they're sold as an accumulation vehicle like this, and they were never really designed for that purpose. If you want to learn more, call us for a free 15-minute phone call or go to our website, paulwinkler.com. The number 615-851-1950 or paulwinkler.com. We don't do anything on commission, and we like to rail against these types of things and help investors do what is in their best interest. paulwinkler.com.
President Biden speaking with Qatari officials, talking about the release of hostages in Gaza, crime against a Tennessee medical center, and a southern border security update. 6 o'clock, Super Talk, 99.7 WTN.
Don't bury the lead, Maury. Have you heard the tease about who is expected to be on the big Kelsey Brothers podcast at the end of the year?
I have not.
Well, they were teasing it. They said they had a special guest, family and friends edition of whatever their podcast is called.
New Heights.
Is it New Heights? Do you watch?
Oh, yeah.
Do you now?
I love it.
Enjoyable. How's your podcast doing, by the way?
Behind the Box Score. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, we'll release an episode tomorrow.
Yeah?
Yep.
What will we be talking about tomorrow? Do you try to leave your Chief fandom at the door?
For sure. I try to be
podcast?
real. Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're going to talk about the Chiefs if it's pertinent and relevant, which it has been because their collapse has been taking over headlines. So I'll be talking about that, and we'll talk about Russell Wilson's new new contract and new no contract, the debacle that was that whole signing from a year ago. And we'll discuss some other things, playoff implications, playoff scenarios, things like that.
With apologies for, delving back into sports. I know we just had the McMurray wide world of sports, but I need to ask one quick question.
Okay.
Do you know what happened to the Packers, Jari Alexander?
Jair Alexander. Yes.
Am I saying that wrong?
Jair Alexander.
All right. What happened there? Do you know that there's something about he made himself a captain and he screwed up the coin toss or something or another?
So, yeah, they're going to overtime. You bring out your three captains onto midfield, and then you do the coin toss, decide heads or tails, if you're going to defend, receive, what side you're going to kick the ball on, all those sorts of things. Big decisions that are, need to be made in an overtime scenario. So he goes in, you have three captains. He just shows up. He's the fourth captain, and he's there, and he almost messes up the call on receiving the ball. He almost gets it wrong. And then after the game, he's completely just flippant about it, laughing about it. And I don't think Coach knew I was from Charlotte because they're playing the Carolina Panthers. And it's something out of like SNL. It's ridiculous. What are you doing? Like a sophomore in high school, something like that, just showing up on midfield. Doing what he wants.
He was not. He just showed up.
Yeah, he's just there.
Oh, well, that's nice. That gets you suspended because apparently the Green Bay Packers have decided that he might need to sit down for a minute.
Yeah, you're done.
Yeah, good for them.
That's great.
All right, I have a text out to Andy Ogles. You just heard the ad, right? I'm gonna get into this a little further in the 6 o'clock hour because I don't. This is very odd to me. I've written Andy Ogles. I'll tell you what I wrote him in just a moment. Play the end of this ad. We just heard the ad where the caller brought up, a caller previous to this hour, brought up this advertisement that's been running for a while. And I admit that I've not been listening closely enough to hear what they say at the end of the ad. I assumed that it was a political campaign ad. Paid for by Andy Ogles for Congress. I'm Andy Ogles and I approve this message. That kind of thing. Well, that's not what it says. Here's what it says at the end of the Andy Ogles advertisement.
Paid for by official funds authorized by the House of Representatives.
So the caller had it, and I'm glad that I did not pointedly suspect that he had the language wrong because I admit that I thought that. I thought to myself, well, obviously this is not what the thing said, but it's exactly what the caller said it said. Paid for by, well, play it one more time.
Paid for by official funds authorized by the House of Representatives.
Official funds authorized by the House of Representatives. How do you take that? That's taxpayer money, right?
It says official funds, yeah.
Official funds of the House of Representatives. Yeah. If that's true, why? I mean, I think the caller is right to call it out. I thank them for calling it out, and I want to know why in the world would we be spending taxpayer dollars to promote Andy Ogles or anyone else for that matter? I've written Andy about this. Hey, Andy, Matt Murphy here. I am currently on afternoon drive for Brian Wilson while he's on vacation. A caller asked a question about some of your ads you're running on the radio station, asking what does it mean when it says paid for by official funds from the House of Representatives. Do you know what this means? I am curious. Please let me know. Matt. I will let you know if he responds. One more hour to go. It is The Drive on Supertalk 99.7 WTN. Join us at 615-737-9986, either through the telephone or the super text line. Always good to turn a monologue into a dialogue. One more hour to go on Supertalk.
It is 6 o'clock. I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. Now, we are monitoring a chance for some showers here tonight in Music City. Now, with cooling temperatures, that could bring maybe the first snow of the season. It's going to be cold air building today as into tonight. Showers are also possible tomorrow morning through really the whole day on Friday. So that chance for freeze or snow sustains throughout tomorrow. We'll keep you updated right here. Full weather forecast, a traffic report headed your way right now. 5 minutes. President Biden spoke to Qatari officials to negotiate the release of more hostages, and a top aide also met with U.S. officials to discuss more aid into Gaza. Elizabeth Schulze brings us more. She's in the U.S. Virgin Islands traveling with President Biden.
The two leaders emphasized the urgent need to try to get the remaining hostages out. The White House said that, of course, includes the Americans who are still being held hostage. Remember that Qatar was the critical intermediary in the hostage negotiations for that first ceasefire. Qatar and Egypt together helped broker that deal to get the hostages out and to have that ceasefire in place. And it comes as there's this ongoing discussion over another ceasefire to try to get that in place while also getting more aid into Gaza.
And Israel says it aims to free the more than 100 hostages who remain in captivity. Now to a crime story here in the Volunteer State. An Oklahoma man was arrested last night for allegedly making a violent threat against TriStar Hendersonville Medical Center. Officials said it was a threatening message that included odd comments, some frustrations from the caller. Police realized through investigation that 45-year-old Kyle Andrew Odell was the culprit. He had used the same phone to call an Oklahoma hospital prior to this. He'll now be held as a fugitive from justice, pending extradition to Sumner County. A southern border security update. Top Biden administration officials meeting today in Mexico City with Mexico's president on how the two countries can jointly address the growing crisis there.
An apparent caravan of an estimated 6,000 migrants now making their way to the U.S. border. Norve Diaz from Colombia is traveling with his children, saying he's fighting for the well-being of his family. White House officials blaming volatility in Central and South American countries, but Republicans blasting the president.
As Jay O'Brien reporting. Comedian and musician Tom Smothers has died. Smothers, best known as half of a comedy duo, was 86 years old. A statement from the National Comedy Center saying Smothers passed away peacefully following a recent battle with cancer. Here's more on Tom Smothers from Bill Deal.
Tom Smothers and his brother Dick hosted the now legendary Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour.
A lot of people lie. Politicians lie.
Tom was the goofy one, the guitar-playing trickster with the yo-yo, but behind the scenes, he was the driving force in fighting the CBS censors to let them reference politics, the Vietnam War, 60s counterculture, and more on their show. In a statement, Tom's brother Dick says their relationship was like a good marriage. The longer they were together, the more they loved and respected one another. We're told Tom Smothers died from cancer. He was 86.
And that is the latest news. Weather and traffic next. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
It is The Drive. No Brian Wilson today. No Brian Wilson this week. Matt Murphy in for Brian. Normally here from noon until 3. Today in from 3 until 7, and pleased to be here. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. We've got one more hour to go. Mac Morey back in the newsroom. Chris Webber behind the glass, running the controls, making sure that everything that comes out of our speakers sounds as good as humanly possible, and that is difficult work considering his host. Wait, I just got a report. Oh, wait, I lost the story. Who's dead at the age of 48? Oscar-winning actor dead at the age of 48? What? I just had it and I lost it. All right, I'll figure that out here in just a moment. In the meantime, there are a couple of questions that we need to clean up in the final hour of the show. One is whether or not Taylor Swift will appear with Travis Kelce on his podcast at the end of the year. More on that coming up in a moment. I know that curious minds want to know. By the way, you're getting I have failed to listen to the Behind the Scoreboard card podcast. Am I saying that right?
Behind the Box Score?
Behind the Box Score podcast. But you're getting kudos from non-sports aficionados. Jason, as a matter of fact, said, I don't even like football, and I enjoy listening to this podcast.
Thank you, Jason. He's the man. Jason's awesome.
How about that? And this, Andy writes in, Matt is bleep stirring. I love it. Ogles has been compromised already right out of the gate. That or he has been a plant the whole time. Place to fool the COVID rebels of red Tennessee to pretend to be a leader. Must admit, I bought it. I'm not poop stirring at all. I'm just asking a question, and I'm trying to get answers. I've never heard this disclaimer on a political advertisement before, and it appears that the money paying for this ad, I mean, someone's paying for the advertisement on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. One would presume that he's doing some advertising elsewhere. I've listened to the commercial quite a bit, and I have failed, I admit, to listen to the end of it. I always assumed that this was an early stab at Andy Ogles promoting his reelection campaign. Obviously, House of Representative members run every 2 years, and all the membership are up for reelection this year, 2024. That said, Andy is, I don't know that Andy is a vulnerable candidate. I would suggest that incumbents, regardless of the personal politics involved, meaning his individual votes, where he stood on this issue or that issue, I would suggest more broadly that any incumbent is most vulnerable outside of suggestion of incompetence or corruption. They are most vulnerable during their first reelection campaign. 0370 says, I think it means it was approved by them, not funded by them. I don't know. Chris Webber has it, and I'm going to get him to re-rack it. I want to listen to it one more time. I've got a text message out to Representative Ogles to try to clean this up. I'm not accusing the man of anything. It was brought up by a caller asking the question, what does this mean? Does this mean that this is taxpayer money going to fund this advertisement? Play the latter portion of this one more time. Chris Webber.
Paid for by official funds authorized by the House of Representatives.
It says paid for. So it says paid for by official. Do it one more time.
Paid for by official funds authorized by the House of
Yeah, it
Representatives.
says paid for by official funds authorized by the House of Representatives. And then it goes, pfft. I don't know why it's doing that, but that's what it does. Paid for by official funds authorized. I don't know how to interpret that other than that is taxpayer money going to pay for what seems to be a political advertisement for Andy Ogles. Jason writes in and says, you and Andy just made up and had a sleepover, and now you're trying to destroy him. I'm not trying to destroy. I just want to know. Now, I'm going to be a little annoyed if this is taxpayer money going to these political advertisements, because that's what they are. Hi, I'm Andy Ogles, and I'm awesome. And I'm not saying Andy isn't or is. I'm saying that's what the advertisement's all about. I'm cool. I'm great. I got all this done. Aren't I awesome? Paid for by official funds authorized by the House of Representatives. I finally got it right. So we'll wait. We'll withhold judgment until we get a response. In the meantime, I got the story on the Oscar-winning movie star dead at the age of 48. Lee Sun-kyun, who is a South Korean actor known for his role in the Oscar-winning film Parasite, was found dead at the age of 48. Authorities confirmed he was found dead in Seoul, Korea, Wednesday after weeks of an intense police investigation into alleged drug use. After police received reports the actor had been missing, they went on the hunt for Lee. Sadly, he has been found dead at the age of 48. I heard it was a good film. I've not seen the movie. Lee Sun-kyun, South Korean actor, dead at the age of 48. So that cleans that up. Is that not the taxpayer donation on our tax forms? I don't know, Sandra. I admit ignorance when I have it, and I am ignorant of anything like this occurring in politics previous to listening to this advertisement more closely. And thank you to the caller. I forget his name, but thank you to the caller who alerted us to this earlier on the drive. Now, these ads have been running for, what would you say, Weber? At least a couple of weeks, right?
They started running on the 11th of December.
Okay. So that's about right. A couple of weeks. Andy Ogles touting his performance. There are a couple of versions that I've heard of the advertisement. One would presume that all of them end in the same way. So we're asking the question, and if this is the case, I have a lot of trouble with the idea of the House of Representatives. And that is my speculation. I'm just listening to the language of the last sentence of the ad, and paid for by official funds authorized by the House of Representatives would indicate to me that if the House of Representatives authorizes the expenditure of the funds to pay for that advertisement, that would be taxpayer dollars going to pay for those advertisements. And I would be really curious how in the world we can justify any of that. Chip writes in and says, to play devil's advocate, just because it says they're authorized by the House of Representatives could also mean that they're coming from a source that the House of Representatives allows to pay for political advertisements, not coming from the House of Representatives. This is beginning to feel like a Saturday Night Live skit. Can you play it one more time for me? Because, all of us need to hear it one more time in our lives. Go. Ready? Go.
Oh, hang on. It jumped on me.
Oh, ready. Hang on. It jumped on you. Go.
Paid for by official funds authorized by the House of Representatives.
Paid for by official funds authorized by the House of Representatives. I mean, breaking down the language, I don't see how we could. Craig says there's a $3 amount on the tax form for the presidential campaign. The money is from MC. I don't know what that means. 3887 says, could that possibly be two sentences? Paid for by official funds, period, authorized by the House of Representatives? That's not what it sounds like.
Paid for by official funds authorized by the House of Representatives.
No,
there's no stop in there.
No, there's no pause in there. Based on what I'm listening to, here's what my conclusion would be without knowing any other information. Sounds like that's paid by taxpayer dollars. And if that's it does, Craig, it doesn't say RNC, and I've already thought about that. The Republican National Committee is a completely different entity. This says the House of Representatives. So if I'm right, I agree with 4667 that these clowns get it together enough to pay to authorize money for political advertisements, but they can't figure out how to get money down to the southern border. They can't figure out how to stop overspending on abortion travel or transgender reassignment surgeries in the United States military with the National Defense Authorization Act, but they can pay for this? Come on. It's weird. I'm going to choose to believe that there is a misunderstanding going on, and that at some point we'll get an answer to said misunderstanding. That's what I'm going to choose to believe. In the meantime, I mentioned this, and I don't have an answer on this one either. We have more questions than answers on the drive today on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. We were discussing the blockage of travel in New York City at LaGuardia Airport and at LAX. There is an expectation that more of that is on the horizon. these quote-unquote pro-Palestinian, I would call them pro-Hamas because no one has explained to me the difference. I believe them to be pro-Hamas. To call yourself pro-Palestinian is to call yourself pro-Hamas. To call yourself pro-Hamas is to call yourself pro-death of innocent civilians. Okay? Cannot put it any more plainly. And I am happy to discuss with anyone what the difference between pro-Palestinian and pro-Hamas is. Just give me a call at 615-737-9986. But these protests are ongoing. There was a brief stoppage of travel going into LaGuardia Airport in New York City. There was also a brief stoppage of travel in LAX. And I made the comment that, look, y'all better watch out. Y'all better not bring that crap to Tennessee because people are going to get a bellyful of it. And unless authorities have a clear path of action, sadly, you will see vigilantes taking action on their own, and that's going to lead to conflict, and that's going to lead to danger, and that's going to lead to violence. Well, I was made aware of something that happened prior to my coming to the state of Tennessee, and I don't know the answer to whether or not this bill passed. Here's the story from Fox 17. Tennessee lawmakers are considering a bill. This is from March of 2021, okay? So 2.5 years ago, a little over 2.5 years ago. I do not know if this passed. I'm endeavoring to find out. Tennessee lawmakers are considering a bill that would bring criminal immunity to drivers who hit protesters illegally blocking the road. Man, I hope this passed. Not because I want anybody to be hit, because I want immunity to drivers who accidentally hit protesters as they are trying to get from point A to point B to where they want to go. The bill says drivers will not face prosecution if they hurt or kill a protester illegally blocking a roadway if the driver, quote, exercises due caution and then hits them unintentionally. Lawmakers supporting the bill says it protects drivers from harm if they're targeted during a protest. According to Representative William Lamberth, if you intentionally cause harm, this bill won't cover you. That's not what we're trying to do here. Lawmakers discussed the bill in a criminal justice subcommittee hearing. Once again, this was 2 years ago. Representative Bruce Griffey, who co-sponsored the legislation, said he wanted stronger language to protect people trying to drive away from protests. Obviously, this was in the aftermath of many of the BLM protests of the summer of 2020. More on that as that information becomes available. Right now, it's Francis's turn out of Murfreesboro with perhaps an answer for the question regarding the funding of the advertisement. Francis, thanks for being on the drive this afternoon.
Hello, thank you for having me on. I think the answer has to do with the franking privilege that congressmen are granted. You perhaps have received mail pieces either during election years or off election years that have been paid for by Congress with official funds that just tout the merits of having that person in Congress. You know, just they passed a law or something else, or they voted for this or that. But I think with the update of media, the way it's used today, that it's highly likely that they have extended this privilege to doing radio ads and even perhaps internet work. So I think that's why, and of course it's not a campaign tax or money that comes from taxes to pay for their campaigns. It's just to state what they have done while they're in Congress. Does that make sense?
So it makes sense. What you just said makes sense. So it is a fund authorized by the House of Representatives to provide necessary and appropriate information for the voters of a given district as to what the individual representative has accomplished. But I understand that as far as that goes. But I also heard the ad.
I know. I've listened to that ad too, and I questioned it at first too. But at no time, the critical points whenever they're sending a mail piece is it cannot say reelect or vote for. As long as it just says, this is what I've done, I'm a great guy, then we're fine. It's when they say those words, reelect or vote for, that becomes a campaign mail piece. You said just not say that.
Your explanation makes perfect sense, but let me ask you this, Frances. Are you buying this?
My jury's still out. I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. It's Christmas and the spirit's generosity. I'm sorry, that's all I got.
It's the holidays, Murph. Come on. I mean,
but he doesn't say vote for or reelect me.
I'm going to beg of Chris Webber to rack up. Thank you, Frances. That makes sense. Frances has, I think, cracked the code. The United States House of Representatives authorized funding for electronic media, radio, to give the House of Representatives and their membership the ability to detail what they have done as a member of the House of Representatives. After the break, I'm going to re-rack the ad itself because I think I just want to hear it because it feels like a load of horse manure. If Brian were here, he would play the I mean, it just, and I'm not even blaming Andy yet. 621 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Super Talk 99.7 WTN 625. We have a number of individuals calling in, and Chris Webber and myself are doing a bit of sleuthing on our own. There are reports of a potential disturbance at Opry Mills Mall with reports of what? Multiple police cars responding to something or another going on at the mall, Chris? Is that what you have?
Yeah, as many as 20 to 30, according to some accounts online. And I'm seeing a piece of video right now that was just posted on the X machine of people exiting in a hurry from the Opry Mills Mall.
All right, so
nothing has been confirmed, obviously.
Yeah, we have no idea what's going on at Opry Mills Mall except to say that we're pretty confident there is a police presence there. We're seeing video evidence of an exodus of individuals who were at the mall post-holiday, and we don't know why. There is rampant speculation going on online about why, but we don't want to cause fear for anyone at the mall or near the mall or whatever. So we're going to hold off on any of that speculation until such time as we can get some confirmation as to what's going on there. But we're told that there is some type of disturbance going on at the mall that has led to a police presence there, 20 to 30 cars, as related by Mr. Weber. We'll try to endeavor to get more information for you and pass it along as that information becomes available. I'm also trying to ascertain whether or not this piece of legislation was passed that would give individuals an opportunity to avoid prosecution should they accidentally hit someone who is illegally blocking the roadway. It would not, according to the bill that was proposed in 2021, it would not support anyone intentionally causing harm to another person, but it would protect them from harm if they are targeted during a protest and they are attempting to get away from said target. We're reflecting on this because of some of the activities going on around the country and the speculation that some of this could come to the state of Tennessee, as many of these quote-unquote pro-Palestinian protesters are suggesting that they are going to shut it down, not to allow us to have a day of celebration at the end of the year, just as they attempted to do on Christmas Day. With that in mind, Rod is in Pleasant View. Rod, thank you for your call. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, sir. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you.
Hey, my question is for law enforcement guys. Isn't there already a law in the books about obstructing commerce?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's no question that these are illegal acts and the individuals involved need to be arrested and taken away. No doubt.
Yeah, it goes back to your point of if they glue themselves to the street, just rip them off.
Well, yeah. I mean, I wish we would do that. Sadly, we default to our own humanity and we try to be nice to these folks, but I think that just empowers them. It emboldens them to do even more of this nonsense. And we saw a little bit of that. There was a little bit of that going on in New York City, but I got to tell you, I was watching some of that earlier today, and it didn't last long before they just started ripping out the cuffs and handcuffing them and throwing them in the paddy wagon, and you got to go. Let's see you later. No, we're not going to put up with that kind of crap.
Well, I think here in Tennessee, I think our law enforcement, they're not going to tolerate it either.
No, I would.
They're not going to let us good old boys in pickup trucks, like you said. We're not going to do that either unless they say, "Hey, go ahead."
Well, I mean, and that's the thing, and that's legit my fear, right? I have every right in the world to defend and protect myself. I have every right in the world to act in a manner of my own choosing in a freedom-loving country, so long as I'm not depriving others of their own rights through force or fraud. Well, that said, if I need to get to the airport, I need to get to the airport, and an absence of police activity protecting my right to do that, to freely move from point A to point B, that's going to lead me to take responsibility for that on my own. Now, you can call that what you want. You can call it vigilantism or whatever. I'm just telling you that it will happen in the state of Tennessee. There's no question. Absent our law enforcement personnel being authorized by their superiors to do something about it swiftly. And that's what I would suggest, that if we see some of this garbage coming to BNA, if we see some of this garbage coming to any place where people congregate, get them out. Get them out. There is speculation that potentially that could be a part of what's going on at Opry Mills Mall. We don't know any of that, so we'll try to get to the bottom of that for you in just a moment. We'll also attempt to get to the bottom of this political advertisement that came to our attention. It seems a political advertisement, but now I understand a little further. Thank you to Francis, who made the call earlier, that this could be taxpayer money being spent to promote this type of thing. And if so, I think we've got some questions for Andy Ogles next time he appears on the radio show. It's 6:31, time for news on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. It is Super Talk 99.7 WTN 635, 636, just about. Right now, as a matter of fact, on my mark. Mark. Plenty more to go on the drive. No Brian Wilson today. Matt Murphy in today, tomorrow, and Friday. Yes, believe it or not, Friday. I am the I'm the lone survivor. Well, I mean, there'll be other folks. JD will be in for Dan Mandis in Nashville's Morning News. Cameron Smith in for Chris Hand. Joan Jones in for me from noon until 3, and then yours truly. But as we established at the beginning of the show, unbeknownst to me, I'm the only full-time guy that will be here. Chris Webber will not be here. Mac Morey will not be. I mean, thankfully, we have a robust bench of capable individuals.
You'll be in good hands.
And we also have Mason, who's coming in. So that's nice. Do you have anything else? I'm looking, and I've not seen anything else on Opry Mills.
I have not seen any definitive reports. Lots of speculation. That's about it.
All right, so we're going to just decline to offer any speculative information regarding what might be going on. Here's what we do know. That there's something that has gone on at Opry Mills Mall that has led to a robust, I think that's a good word, robust police presence. 20 to 30 police vehicles at the scene of the mall. And you said you saw video of individuals leaving at least one particular area of the mall in
mass.
In
yes.
mass.
That's correct, yeah.
Did they seem pretty calm?
They were moving rather swiftly.
Okay, so
many of them running, yes.
Okay, so that's a no. So that's a no. So I mean, any time you hear information about this, you pray for the best and you think about the worst. Okay, you pray for the best and you think about the worst. So we're going to pray for the best and we'll report to you as soon as we know anything. I'm actually looking. Just stand by here. The Metro Nashville Police Department has not reported on it on social media, but they typically don't do that on things like the X machine. Let me look at one of our media partners here. Not seeing anything there. And one more check, and then we'll move on. Also not seeing anything, any update here. So we will keep you updated as to what is going on there. 1515, we don't know. There's something going on at the Opry Mills Mall. But we don't know what it is, and I'm not going to speculate as to what it might be. Jason writes in, before you came to Nashville, protesters shut down I-24 in the bleeping chief of police. They served them cocoa. Really? Sandra says, I believe it was in response, the legislation, to someone who feared for their life during a protest and accidentally hit someone or ran over their foot or something along those lines. Yes. I would agree with that. I'm getting clarity as to what's going on with regard to that. And let's try to get a little bit of clarity with an on-the-scene report. Todd is at Opry Mills Mall as we speak, and he joins us on the drive with Matt Murphy. Hello, Todd.
Hello.
What do you know?
Yes.
What do you see and what do you know, Todd?
Well, I actually work at a store in the mall, and when they, got the alert, they just, put everybody in the back of all the stores. But they have released, let everybody go, and everybody's going to their vehicles and leaving the mall. And from what I can tell, it was, if anything at all happened, it wasn't actually in the mall. It was more on the outskirts of, like, over near where the hotel and the National Palace and things like that are. But it was mainly a false alarm.
Yeah, I'm looking on WKRN's website where they're saying that police are looking for a suspect after a shooting. No, wait. Stand by. That's bad reporting. Someone sent me that, and that's from 2020. So I apologize completely. Someone sent me a bad report from WKRN. My bad. Go ahead, Todd. I apologize.
So as far as I know, everything has been okayed for people to, leave the mall. Other than that, that's about all the details I have. So, I don't know if it was actual, shooting or what, but all I know is it was just the information we got was a code red, and that, that means, get to a safe place. And, but that was over, 30, almost probably 45 minutes ago.
Do you, as a worker at the mall, do you get something of an all clear, Todd, when they believe that any potential danger has passed?
Yeah, as far as that goes, I know that as far as tonight goes, the manager was informed that she could let everybody that was in the store leave the store, but they have to shut them all down. So from now, it's closed. They're emptying the registers and all that kind of stuff at this point.
Okay.
And the mall is closed, so nobody's allowed in. But if you're in, you can leave and go home to your cars. But it's a standstill out here in the parking lot right now. I mean, there's several blue lights flashing around everywhere in the parking lot, but it doesn't look like the traffic is moving hardly at all.
Well, I would imagine if you get that many people into the parking lot,
Exactly.
that many people into their cars. So normally you wouldn't be closed this early, obviously, right?
No, we don't. During the holiday hours, we're actually open until 9 o'clock.
So that would indicate to me that it was a serious enough situation that, so you're saying that the entire mall is slowly shutting down. They're shutting down the stores in all of the mall, or just yours?
Well, I know in my store they are, and I really can't speak for the rest of the stores, but from what I understand, when something like this happens, that's pretty much it for the rest of the, day.
Well, thank you for the information, Todd. If you find out any additional or if there's anything else to add, please don't hesitate to call us back, okay?
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Todd is on the scene at Opry Mills Mall.
Man, I just got a story from News Channel 5 that was just posted a couple minutes ago, and they're saying that dispatch did say they had officers responding to calls of shots fired, and one of the reporters spoke to an officer on the scene who said that they did not find anything suspicious. A fight did break out at the movie theater, but no one was injured, and there's no evidence of a shooting or gunshots that had been fired. So it seems like it's a kind of a false alarm.
Yeah,
situation.
sort of a contained situation there too. So hopefully everything ends well in that situation. Obviously, it's the time of year. Plus, anytime you get a situation where people are gathering in those numbers, and you have someone declaring that shots have been fired, or someone reporting in shots are fired, it's going to be a mild panic situation going on. So hopefully authorities have everything settled at the scene. I do know, obviously, for those of us who have been to Opry Mills Mall, you go through sort of security checkpoints. I don't think you go through metal detectors, though, do you?
Not the last time I was there, but that's been a while.
I don't think so. But I know that every time I've been, especially this time of year, you've got police officers, because no one under a certain age is allowed to be in the mall unaccompanied by an adult. So I know that there are police officers or security personnel stationed at the entry points to the mall to make sure that that's going on. I do not recall whether or not there was metal detectors or that level of security. So, obviously, people can get around that sort of thing too. So we'll continue to update you on that front as information becomes available, but hopefully everything is in a static situation there. 0202, no worries. 0202 was the one that sent me the KRN story that was from 2020. He did not mean anything by it. Now I understand that, and I appreciate that. So let me circle back to this advertisement featuring Andy Ogles. I promised that we would play the whole thing, and I want to do that because we're trying to better understand where the money is coming from to pay for this thing. Now, Jackie writes in and says, they, meaning incumbents, aim to stay in power by any means necessary. This would feel to me, Stephen writes in and says, the Ogles ad is just poorly worded. The private funds meet requirements of the House of Representatives. I don't think that's what it's saying at all. And based on some information that I've received, it would seem that this money is coming from the House of Representatives. Okay? So let's listen to the entirety of the ad. And The suggestion has been made by Francis, and it would make sense to me, and I did a little I looked a little of this up during the break too, that there has been an authorization to report, sort of a report of findings. Here's what your House of Representatives member has done during their time in the House. Straight up, this is what they accomplished over the last couple of years, and that now applies to electronic media as well, and that would include us at the radio station, Supertalk 99.7 WTN. That said, listen to the advertisement, and we'll break it down here in just a moment. Listen to it with the understanding that this is potentially a taxpayer-funded ad for Andy Ogles. Go.
Hey, Congressman Andy Ogles here. Since January, I've been up here fighting for America and the great people of Tennessee's 5th District. Washington's status quo is spending folks into economic ruin, but I am committed to finally getting our fiscal house in order. As one of the most productive members of Congress, I've fought for bills to tear through corruption, create transparency, decrease bureaucracy, and slash burdensome federal regulations. It's time for Congress to govern for the people.
Paid for by official funds authorized by the House of Representatives.
This picture is becoming clearer to me. I'm going to bet dollars to donuts that when we get Andy on, and we will endeavor to do that for tomorrow, that he will say that this is money authorized through the House to make the 5th Congressional District aware of what he has been doing for the people of the 5th Congressional District. He will argue that that's not I'm predicting this. I don't know it. But using my years of expertise in doing this, I predict to you that Andy's going to tell us that that's not a political ad. Now, let me ask you, is that a political ad? It feels like it is a political ad that only goes so far into the politicking so as to abide by the rules that are in place to allow him to use taxpayer money to run that ad. That's what it feels like. And whether or not it violates the particular nature of whatever laws are in place regarding the rules, I think taxpayer dollars should not go anywhere near that advertisement, because that's a campaign ad, whether it says it's a campaign ad or not. 1513, look, I'm not against Andy. 1513 says that's just announcing what he has accomplished. Is it really? I mean, I think it's doing a little more than that. But I get you. 48 after the hour, quick timeout. Back in a moment. We'll wrap things up with some better news, to include an Elizabeth Warren action figure doll and the response to it on social media. That's coming up next on The Drive on Supertalk.
Hey folks, Paul Winkler here. One of the things that we see from time to time, well, way too often, is this. Let's say that you go to a financial advisor and they say, hey, you need to set up an investment portfolio, and what we need to do is we need to have some of your money in stocks or mutual funds or ETFs or something like that, and we need to have something fixed or guaranteed in your investment portfolio that'll protect you against the market downturns. And quite often what they're talking about, they may not use this word, but often what they're talking about is putting your money into some sort of an annuity, like an indexed annuity or something like that, or a fixed annuity. And what they're doing is they're saying, hey, let's put your money in both of these, which sounds really good. And you should. And typically in an investment portfolio, you do want to have fixed investments and stocks as well in the portfolio to protect against inflation. But here's what happens when you manage a portfolio. Let me use a really, really simple example. Let's say I have a portfolio and I got stocks in there. Then I have my fixed income, my bonds in the portfolio as well. And let's say I have half my money in each. When stocks really do well, what we want to do is they're going to be overweighted in my portfolio. I own too much of them because they've done well compared to bonds. It was supposed to be half and half, and now maybe it's 70% stocks and 30% bonds, let's say, or something like that. So I want to sell some of this and buy some of that to bring it back to 50-50 and back and forth throughout time. Well, the problem is when you're managing a portfolio and rebalancing in that way, bringing it back to the original portfolio mix of half and half in my example, I'm going to have to incur a trading cost or a commission or a back-end surrender with the annuity. It doesn't make any sense to use that product in this particular manner. Why do people do it? Well, the reason quite often is this. Commissions are very high with these products. And a lot of firms, they actually require their advisors to recommend a certain amount of annuities for every person that walks in the door. Now, typically annuities are used for a different purpose. They were actually designed for a totally different purpose. And that was distribution toward the end of life. When somebody looks like they're going to run out of money, they're annuitized. Now, let me tell you something. One study showed there was only like 5% of annuities are ever used in that fashion. Most often they're sold as an accumulation vehicle like this, and they were never really designed for that purpose. If you want to learn more, call us for a free 15-minute phone call or go to our website, paulwinkler.com. The number 615-851-1950 or paulwinkler.com. We don't do anything on commission, and we like to rail against these types of things and help investors do what is in their best interest. paulwinkler.com.
It is 6:53, Super Talk 99.7 WT, in a few more moments before we'll call it an evening and hand it off to the great one, Mark Levin, or a substitute host, as it was last night. I am a substitute host for the one and only Brian Wilson. I call him B-Dubs.
I'm sure he loves that.
Because I'm cool like that. Well, you know what? I think it's better than Bry-Y.
That's what JD calls him.
I know.
Yeah. If you really want to get his attention, call him Bry Bags.
Bry Bags?
Or maybe it's just Bry Bag. There was someone he used to work with back in D.C. that called him that, and he did not care for it too much.
I would imagine that he did not.
I don't know what it meant.
Bry Bag.
But
I'm not going there.
No. Or you can call him a moose. That's what Dick Durbin called him.
A moose?
Yeah.
Height?
I would assume, yeah.
Like,
I think because...
Why do I feel like it was probably... you big moose. Get out of the way, you big moose. That kind of thing.
Yeah, it was more of a, because Brian is the type that just kind of goes.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think Dick Durbin took too kindly to him kind of moosing around.
Yeah, get big moose and get out of here. Well, he is out of here until the new year, and he'll be back next week after the New Year's Day holiday on Monday, back live and in person on Tuesday. Until then, we're holding down the fort. Joan Jones holding down the fort for me. Cameron Smith holding down the fort for Chris Hand. And JD, the aforementioned, holding down the fort for Dan Mandis, although you'll hear Dan tonight on Red Eye Radio. So we're just moving all over the place, keeping it going between Christmas and New Year's. Okay, so we're getting a clearer picture of what happened at Opry Mills Mall. There was a report about 30 or so minutes ago when we had an on-the-scene call from Todd, who had just left the mall. He works there. There has been a report of shots fired at the mall. We don't know if there were actually shots fired at the mall, but there has been a report of shots fired at the mall. A significant police presence responding to that report that shots were fired at the mall. It caused, I would call it a mild panic, in as much as I've seen two separate videos of individuals leaving en masse Opry Mills Mall swiftly. Our man on the scene who said that his business had been closed down, believed that the mall itself was slowly shutting down earlier than normal. Normally, holiday hours would indicate that they would be open until 9 o'clock at least, but the indication there is that they're closing down a little early. I also got this from a trusted source that someone who works at the mall, I got this from the mother of this person, said that while she saw nothing, that she was escorted to the back of the store and then eventually escorted by management out of the back of the store. And the report by that individual on the scene that there was shots fired that had been heard by multiple people within the mall. This individual got safely to the parking lot and got home safe. Did not hear the shots, but was told that there were shots fired from inside the mall. It's speculation at this point, but that's the best that we've got. But we do know that authorities are on the scene and the situation seems at very least stable at this stage. Someone not very stable, man, oh man, this reminds me of a story I heard about in Birmingham, Alabama. My co-host in morning radio for the last year of my time at Talk 99.5 in Birmingham had a situation that eventually led to a lawsuit that went all the way to the Alabama Supreme Court. It was over a neighbor of hers allowing their dogs to poop in her yard. And I've told this story in the past. So this neighbor would regularly allow her dogs. They had one of these, a couple of dogs with retractable leashes, and they would go into her yard. She would watch them from her house poop in the yard and then not pick it up. Well, finally, she started going out and saying something about it. And this woman essentially just said, well, go pound sand. She ignored her. Valerie Vining, the co-host, then spoke to the woman's husband, who was an attorney and a pretty egotistical and cocky one at that. And so a lawsuit ensued. And no, it's not what you were thinking. Valerie didn't sue anybody. The people who were allowing their dogs to poop in her yard sued her. Wow. For harassment. Went all the way to the Alabama Supreme Court, where obviously Valerie Vining was victorious in her lawsuit, and she had all of her legal bills paid. Well, I guess it could have been worse. This is awful. On December 23rd in Knoxville, Tennessee, a Tennessee man is now facing murder charges after a dispute over dog poop. Investigators learned that the victim shared a yard with 34-year-old Stephen White. According to an arrest warrant, the victim asked White to pick up the poop that his dog had just deposited in the yard. And instead of agreeing to do so, according to the report, White pulled out a handgun and shot the victim in the chest. My Lord. White now in custody and charged with second-degree murder over dog poop. Over dog poop. And then finally, under the category of I'll take things that never effing happen for $500, Alex, Lisa writes in, I found my 5-year-old daughter's Elizabeth Warren action figure in her bed when I was making it this morning. When I asked her why, she said, I was scared, and she makes me feel brave. Okay. I have $1,000 that never happened, that nobody can prove that happened. The comments on my website, go to Matt Murphy Show on Twitter, at Matt Murphy Show on Twitter, and see some of the comments under the post. They are absolutely delicious. That's it for us on The Drive. We'll be back tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Until then, have a great evening, folks. So long.